Chapter 445. Chang Bo slowly exhaled as he sighed emotionally. The fourth young master's talent has always been extraordinary since he was young. I once looked forward to what the fourth young master could achieve in the future, but I never thought that in just 6 years, the fourth young master would go from a new saint to a peak expert, like a heaven saint master. Even with the entire continent in perspective, such a genius is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Ha ha ha. The person who was most excited after hearing Chang Bo's praise was Chang Yangba. He was unable to suppress his surging emotions as he laughed aloud. 2 beads of tears slowly flowed from his eyes. This is just too unbelievable. Xiangtian is actually a heaven saint master. Let's quickly spread this news. Our Changyang prefecture has such a genius. Even the imperial family will want to curry favor with us. Jianchen's second aunt, Yu Fengyan, emotionally said. Hearing this, Jianchen hurriedly said, Second aunt, it's best if we don't spread this matter. I don't want too many people to know. A 21-year-old heaven saint master was just too shocking. If this news were to spread, it would probably spread across the entire continent very quickly. At that time, there would definitely be a lot of trouble. Jianchen did not want to become the center of attention either. The fourth young master is right. It's best if we don't spread this news. We should hide it for as long as we can. If the large organizations that stand at the peak of the continent learn about the fourth young master's talent, no one can predict what will happen in the future. They might try to rope him in, or they might do something that is detrimental to the fourth young master, Chang Bo said. He was rather stern. Chang Yangba also realized this. He slowly calmed down and sternly said, Chang Bo is right. It's best that we keep this news to ourselves. Don't spread it. Although this will bring glory to our Changyang prefecture, it will also bring endless trouble to Xiang'er. Jianchen's mother, Bai Yuntian, paled in fright when she heard this. No one cared more about her child than she did. Jianchen's 2 aunts also became stern. They understood that a man's wealth was his own ruin. In their eyes, Jianchen had already become a precious gem. Jianchen did not really care about this issue after hearing Chang Bo and his father's words. He knew his own strength extremely well. As long as he did not come across a saint ruler, he would not be in too much danger. Even if a saint ruler wanted to move against him, the other imperial protector of the Qin Empire would not just sit by and do nothing with his identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. In the kingdom of Jessen's imperial palace, the plainly dressed king and the principal of Kargath Academy, Kafir, sat in a pavilion in the garden. Imperial uncle, who do you think this imperial protector of the Qin Empire, Jianchen, is? Why did he come from so far away to help our kingdom of Jessen repel the allied army? Although our kingdom of Jessen is rich in territory, it is not enough to catch the eye of the Qin Empire. Moreover, the distance between us and the Qin Empire is just too great. The king of the kingdom of Jessen asked the question that was on his mind. He had thought about this question for a long time, but he still could not figure it out. Kafir shook his head. I've never heard of the name Jianchen either. I'm also very confused as to why the Qin Empire would suddenly help our kingdom of Jessen. They came from so far away to help us fend off our enemies. From this, we can tell that the imperial protector of the Qin Empire has some sort of relationship with our kingdom of Jessen. The king of the kingdom of Jessen furrowed his brows. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed through his eyes, and he asked softly, Imperial uncle, do you think this has something to do with the ancestor of the Changyang Empire? A gleam of light flashed through Kafir's eyes as well. At this moment, a guard quickly ran in from outside and knelt down on one knee. Your Majesty, this is an urgent letter from Lore City. The king's expression changed when he heard that it was news from Lore City. He said, Bring it up. The guard immediately stepped forward and respectfully handed the letter to the king. The king opened the letter and read it. A sliver of surprise appeared in his eyes as he murmured, I never thought that he would still be alive. Kafir's expression changed when he heard that. he said in surprise. Don't tell me that the ancestor of the Chongyang Empire has returned. If it's him, then the matter of the Qin Empire makes sense. The king shook his head and handed the letter to Kaffir. After reading the contents of the letter, Kaffir's face was filled with surprise as he said, "It's actually Chongyang Shoten. I never thought that Chongyang Shoten would actually return alive. After he left Chongyang Prefecture, there was no news of him at all. Moreover, the people of Chongyang Prefecture sent out a large number of people to search for him, but they were unable to find any clues. I originally thought that he had met with some mishap, but I never thought that he would actually return on his own. How shocking!" A smile appeared on the king's face as he said, "This Chongyang Shoten really came back at the right time. However, this Chongyang Shoten really hid his strength well. If it weren't for the matter of the northern fort, I'm afraid that none of us would have known that he was so strong. Now that his strength has been completely exposed, the Huayan sect probably won't dare to treat Chongyang Prefecture the same way they did a few years ago. Now that Chongyang Shoten can be considered safe." Kaffir nodded as he thought back to the time when Chongyang Shoten had just broken through to the Saint Realm. He murmured, "This child Chongyang Shoten's talent is truly extraordinary. If he is given time, his future will be limitless. We must nurture him well." A palace maid walked over from the distance and bowed slightly as she softly said, "Reporting to your majesty, the envoys of the Blue Wind Kingdom, the Antilles Kingdom, the Hidden Dragon Kingdom, and the Pinyan Kingdom have all arrived at the Imperial Palace. They are currently waiting in the hall." "Understood. You may leave." The king waved his hand as he indifferently said, "Yes, your majesty." The palace maid immediately retreated. The Qin Empire's deterrence is truly great. These 4 kingdoms have all been greatly frightened by the Qin Empire. Imperial uncle, I'll leave first. I'll see what kind of compensation the envoys of the 4 kingdoms have to offer. Chongyang Prefecture. By now, news of the 4th young master's return had already spread throughout the prefecture. Even the other 3 families of Lore City had received the news. The family heads of the 3 families immediately brought congratulatory gifts to pay a visit. Although Chongyang Prefecture was one of the 4 great families of Lore City, only a few core members knew that Chongyang Prefecture was the strongest in Lore City. That was because Chongyang Prefecture had already stood tall in Lore City for several hundred years, while the other 3 families were only rising stars. It was only because Chongyang Prefecture had always kept a low profile that Chongyang Prefecture was seen as an equal power to the 4 great families in the eyes of the commoners. Chongyang Ba personally received the 3 family heads. Even Chang Bo personally came out, causing the 3 family heads to feel extremely honored. Although Chang Bo was a Heaven Saint Master, he did not have the slightest arrogance of a Heaven Saint Master. He completely regarded himself as the chief steward of Chongyang Prefecture and did all the things that a steward should do. In front of Chongyang Ba, he even referred to himself as an old servant. The 3 family heads had come to pay a visit, mainly in hopes of having their children marry into Chongyang Prefecture. However, when Chongyang Ba told them that their 4th son had already been engaged to Princess Glan a few years ago, the 3 family heads were all disappointed. They then stayed in the prefecture for a while, chatting with Chongyang Ba for a while before leaving. That afternoon, Jianchen walked out of Chongyang Prefecture. After passing through a few streets, he arrived at the inn where Shen Fang and her son were temporarily staying. He then brought the 2 of them out of the inn and walked towards Chongyang Prefecture. Greetings to the 4th young master. The guards at the entrance immediately greeted Jianchen. Right now, almost all the guards in Chongyang Prefecture recognized the 4th young master who had been away for a few years. Jianchen nodded slightly and brought Shen Fang and her son into the courtyard with their heads held high. He temporarily brought Shen Fang and her son to the guest hall and called for 2 maids to scout. Afterwards, he directly went to see Chang Bo and asked Chang Bo to properly take care of the mother and son. He also told Chang Bo about his relationship with them. When Chang Bo heard that the husband of the couple had already lost his life to save Jianqin, his expression immediately became serious. He personally went to take care of Shen Fang and her son's identity and told this matter to Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. After Jianqin's parents found out about the relationship between Jianqin and the mother and son, they immediately put down what they were doing and personally went to receive the mother and son. Along the way, they asked about their well-being with an expression of indescribable gratitude. Since then, Shen Fang and her son temporarily stayed in Changyang Prefecture. Their status was not ordinary. However, Jianqin did not disclose the news of Uncle Kendall's death to Shen Fang and her son. Outside the courtyard of Changyang Prefecture, Jianqin and Chang Bo were strolling. Jianqin suddenly asked, "Chang Bo, is there any way to restore a person whose divine weapon was destroyed?" Chang Bo shook his head and said, "No, at least I haven't heard of it." Fourth young master, is it because of Ken Shaosan? Jianqin sighed softly. He said, "Ken Shaosan was harmed by me. If his problem is not solved, I will not be able to forgive him." Chang Bo fell silent for a while before saying, "Fourth young master, the Tianyuan continent is very large. There are all sorts of treasures. The domains we have seen are only the tip of the iceberg. Although I do not know if there is anything on the Tianyuan continent that can restore a person whose divine weapon was destroyed, that does not prove that there is absolutely no such thing." Jianqin fell silent. If he could not restore Ken Shaosen, he would never be able to forgive himself. Not only was Ken Shaosen the son of Uncle Kendall, he was also the one who had caused him to become like this. "Chang Bo, I need to leave for a while. The matter with the Huayan sect should be dealt with," Jianqin said expressionlessly. His voice was very calm, and no one could tell what he was feeling. Chapter 446. Fourth young master, if you do this, then your strength will definitely be exposed. Although it will bring you a moment of glory, this old servant is worried that it will bring you a series of troubles. Chang Bo frowned and said with some worry, "Chang Bo, you don't have to worry about this problem. I have a way to deal with it." Jianqin's tone was very calm, as if he didn't care about Chang Bo's worries at all. Seeing Jianqin's confident expression, although Chang Bo didn't know what Jianqin was relying on, at least he was relieved. After muttering to himself for a while, he said, "Fourth young master, let this old servant accompany you." Jianqin shook his head and said, "Chang Bo, I can deal with the Huayan sect's matter by myself. I should be clear about my strength. I already have this ability." Hearing this, Chang Bo couldn't help but think of the scene of Jianqin displaying his strength in the Pingyang Kingdom stronghold. He immediately revealed a gratified smile and said, "Now that fourth young master has become a peak expert who can hold up against a side, this old servant won't interfere. Chang Bo, I'll have to trouble you to tell my parents. I will be back soon." When talking about his parents, Jianqin's eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of gentleness. "I will tell the fourth madam and the family head. Fourth young master, go early and come back early." Jianqin nodded, and with a thought, the yuan qi of heaven and earth suddenly surged crazily. A layer of strong and powerful wind element wrapped around Jianqin's body. Then Jianqin stomped his feet on the ground, and like a cannonball, his body turned into a light blue phantom and shot into the sky like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the vast expanse of white clouds. Seeing Jianqin disappear into the clouds, Chang Bo's face revealed a strange expression and muttered, "Strange, when we were at the Pingyang Kingdom stronghold, I clearly saw the fourth young master control the fire element. How can he control the wind element at the same time? Could it be that the fourth young master can control both wind and fire elements at the same time?" Chang Bo raised his head and stared at the vast expanse of white clouds for a moment. In the end, he let out a long sigh and said to himself, "The fourth young master's achievements have far exceeded my expectations. It seems that it won't be long before the Changyang Prefecture enters the ranks of the top clans because of the fourth young master. I wonder if the master will be able to come back. If he knew that our Changyang Prefecture had such an outstanding descendant, I wonder how happy he would be. Afterwards, Changbo found Changyang Ba and told him the news of Jinchen's departure. After Changyang Ba heard of this matter, his eyebrows immediately knitted together. He said with some worry, "Changbo, will Xiang be okay if he goes alone?" Changbo shook his head and said, "No, I personally saw the fourth young master's strength. Even the 4 Heaven Saint Masters of the Pingyang Kingdom and the Qiangan Kingdom's Qianyin sect were unable to harm the fourth young master at all, let alone the Huayan sect. I just don't know how Xiang plans to deal with the Huayan sect. According to what you said, Xiang strength seems to be able to easily destroy the Huayan sect. Back then, the Huayan sect forced Xiang to leave for a few years. Xiang resentment towards the Huayan sect must be extremely strong. Do you think that Xiang will really go overboard and destroy the Huayan sect?" Changyang Ba's eyebrows tightly knitted together as he voiced his worry. Hearing this, Changbo was slightly stunned. Soon after, his expression also changed. He said, "Crap, I actually didn't think of this. With the fourth young master's strength, he does indeed have the ability to destroy the Huayan sect. But our kingdom of Jessen has just gone through a great battle. Not only is our national strength weak, but we have also lost 3 Heaven Saint Masters. Our strength is far from what it was before. If the Huayan sect is destroyed by the 4th young master, then our kingdom of Jessen's strength will definitely fall into a period of decline. It will take us at least 100 years to recover." That's right. If Xiang really does kill all the experts of the Huayan sect, then this matter will be difficult to deal with. Right now, our kingdom of Jessen can't afford to lose a Heaven Saint Master. Changyang Ba's expression became somewhat solemn. Whether the kingdom of Jessen could continue to develop or not completely depended on the support of Heaven Saint Masters. This was because Heaven Saint Masters were the spiritual pillars of every kingdom. They were the symbol of strength. Even the loss of one would be a great blow to the kingdom. Moreover, the first sect master of the Huayan sect was one of the founding heroes of the kingdom of Jessen. He had a great amount of contributions, and his status was extraordinary. If the people of Changyang Prefecture were to destroy the Huayan sect, then it would indeed be unreasonable. Several thousand meters in the air, Jianchen flew through the white clouds at high speed. The thick layer of clouds completely covered his body. He did not bring the white tiger with him this time. He had fed the white tiger several heavenly resources the night before. With the speed at which the white tiger digested the medicinal energy, it would take at least 2 or 3 days for it to wake up. The Huayan sect was over 4,000 kilometers away from Lore City. It was located on one of the most famous mountains in the kingdom of Jessen, Mount Tianhua. The Huayan sect had an extremely important position in the kingdom of Jessen. It was the strongest power in the kingdom of Jessen aside from the imperial family. If their newly promoted Heaven Saint Master was included, then the Huayan sect was fully deserving of being called the strongest power in the kingdom of Jessen. Even the imperial family was suppressed by them. The Huayan sect had existed in the kingdom of Jessen for several hundred years. When the kingdom of Jessen had just been founded, the Huayan sect and the Changyang Prefecture had both been established at the same time. The founder of the Huayan sect, the ancestor of the Changyang Prefecture, and the first principal of the Kargath Institute were all founding heroes of the kingdom of Jessen. After 4 hours of flying, Jianchen finally arrived at Mount Tianhua. He landed 5 kilometers away and slowly walked toward the Huayan sect. The large group of people from the Huayan sect had only just returned in the morning. Everyone was very busy. A large number of disciples were hurriedly shuttling through the Huayan sect. However, there were still 10 disciples standing guard at the towering entrance. They were divided into 2 groups and were in charge of guarding the entrance. Jianchen puffed out his chest and walked toward the Huayan sect with large strides. When he was 30 meters away from the entrance, 2 disciples immediately stopped him and arrogantly asked, "Who are you? Why have you come to our Huayan sect?" The news of Saya becoming a Heaven Saint Master had already spread throughout the Huayan sect. Now that the Huayan sect had 3 Heaven Saint Masters, it was truly the strongest power in the kingdom of Jessen. Because of this, the ordinary disciples of the Huayan sect had become much more arrogant than before. They did not place anyone in their eyes. Chapter 447. The loud noise at the gate alarmed the disciples who were busy near the gate. Immediately, many disciples put down the things in their hands and quickly ran toward the gate. Jianchen stepped over the collapsed entrance of the Huayan sect and walked in neither hurriedly nor slowly, grabbing at the air with both hands. The surrounding yuan qi once more began to surge. It gathered in his hands at an inconceivable speed, quickly condensing into 2 fiery red swords that emitted heaven-burning flames. With a shake of his hands, he shot them toward a large hall in front of him. Boom! Following a huge explosion, the large hall was swallowed by a huge wave of flames. The entire hall collapsed and was charred black. The Huayan sect's buildings were completely made of granite. This kind of stone was very resistant to fire and would not burn. Originally, Jianchen had wanted to use the method he had used on Yangji Zong to burn down the Huayan sect. But the Huayan sect's buildings made Jianchen give up on that idea. This huge explosion alarmed the entire Huayan sect. The fiery light that filled the sky was extremely dazzling, illuminating half of the sky and attracting even more people's attention. Immediately, all of the Huayan sect's disciples began to rush over. Even some of the Huayan sect's higher-ups were alarmed and rushed over from all directions. Not long after, over 200 people wearing the same uniform had gathered outside the Huayan sect's entrance. They surrounded Jianchen, the uninvited guest. "Brat, who are you? Do you not want to live anymore? You actually dare to behave so atrociously in my Huayan sect. You actually destroyed our Huayan sect's entrance. Our Huayan sect will definitely not forgive you." The 200 Huayan sect disciples all angrily cursed at Jianchen. Their furious gazes seemed to be able to spit fire. Jianchen had destroyed the Huayan sect's entrance, which was equivalent to a slap to the Huayan sect's face. These Huayan sect disciples all felt extremely furious, and their faces were filled with killing intent. Now that the Huayan sect had 3 peak Heaven Saint Masters, there was no power in the kingdom of Jessen that dared to oppose them. The glory of having 3 Heaven Saint Masters made these ordinary disciples of the Huayan sect feel extremely proud. Their gazes became much higher, and they no longer put anyone in their eyes. "Second Martial Uncle is here. Everyone make way." At this time, a loud shout rang out from within, and the 200 Huayan sect disciples immediately opened up a path for that person. A middle-aged man in a brocade robe with a resolute expression walked in with a majestic gait. His sharp eyes were like unsheathed swords as he stared at Jianchen. "Sir, who are you? Why did you destroy my Huayan sect's entrance and a large hall? If you don't give me a clear explanation, no matter who you are, don't even think of leaving today," the middle-aged man sternly shouted. Hearing this, Jianchen's gaze turned cold. He sneered, "The Huayan sect is actually even more arrogant than I imagined. You don't put anyone in your eyes at all. According to what you're saying, if I were a prince of the kingdom of Jessen, wouldn't you also leave me here?" The middle-aged man's expression changed, and he angrily shouted, "Impudent! Don't talk nonsense. I've seen the 2 princes of the kingdom of Jessen. Just who are you? Hurry up and tell me, or don't blame my Huayan sect for being impolite." "Impolite? I just happen to want to see just how impolite you are. If you have any ability, then go ahead and show me." Jianchen sneered. His gaze became even colder, and an intense killing intent flickered in his eyes. The middle-aged man coldly snorted. Now that the Huayan sect had 3 Heaven Saint Masters, their status in the kingdom of Jessen had skyrocketed. No one could compare to them. So he did not place this youth in his eyes at all. He immediately waved his hand and shouted, "Go, capture him. If he dares to resist, don't hold back." Yes, the middle-aged man clearly had a lot of prestige. Many disciples responded, and several dozen of them immediately charged at Jianqin with saint weapons in hand. They attacked with their full strength as soon as they arrived. Jianqin slowly crossed his arms in front of his chest. He just stood there with his back straight, showing no intention of fighting. However, just as the disciples approached within 10 meters of his body, the sand and stones on the ground suddenly flew up without warning, carrying a layer of faint purple and green light as they shot out in all directions at lightning speed. In an instant, miserable cries rang out everywhere. Several dozen vigorous Huayan sect disciples collapsed on the ground in the blink of an eye, howling in pain. Their bodies were riddled with countless tiny holes. Fresh blood flowed out, dyeing their clothes red. All of them were heavily injured. Some of the weaker ones even died on the spot due to internal injuries. The expression of the middle-aged man, called Second Martial Uncle, suddenly changed. He gravely looked at Jianqin's face that did not seem to be in his 20s. At this moment, he no longer dared to look down on this youth, who was much younger than him. "Just who are you?" The middle-aged man said in a deep voice, but he did not show any fear. "What's going on?" At this moment, a deep voice rang out from behind. The sect master of the Huayan sect, Qing Fei, had led a group of experts over, followed by a large group of Huayan sect disciples. "Greetings, sect master." The middle-aged man immediately bowed to Qing Fei and explained, "Sect master, we don't know where this brat came from. Not only did he barge into our Huayan sect for no reason, he even destroyed our main hall and injured several dozen disciples." Seeing the ruins of the sect, Qing Fei's expression became somewhat gloomy. Yesterday, the Huayan sect had suffered a loss in Changyang Prefecture and returned dejectedly. Today, someone had come to cause trouble and even destroyed the Huayan sect's main hall. This was simply a slap to the Huayan sect's face. "Who are you? Why have you come to cause trouble in my Huayan sect?" Qing Fei glared at Jianqin. His expression was very unsightly. "Sect master of the Huayan sect, haven't you been looking for me for several years? Yesterday, you even came to my house to cause trouble. Do you really think I'm easy to bully?" Jianqin coldly sneered at Qing Fei. Qing Fei's expression changed, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. "You are Changyang Shoten." "That's right. Sect Master Cheng. Didn't you want to capture me, Changyang Shoten, and bring me to your Huayan sect? Now that I, Changyang Shoten, have taken the initiative to come to your Huayan sect, I want to see just what your Huayan sect can do to me. Back then, your Huayan sect forced me to leave my home. Now, it's time to properly settle that debt." Jianqin spoke one word at a time, the resentment in his heart extremely intense. Qing Fei's expression was somewhat bewildered as he looked behind Jianqin. His expression became somewhat serious, and he loudly said, "Senior Chang Wuji, since you've come, please show yourself." Jianqin coldly smiled. "There's no need to call me. I'm the only one here. Changbo didn't come at all." Hearing that, a trace of joy flashed in Qing Fei's eyes, and the worry in his heart disappeared. He coldly smiled. "Changyang Shoten, if you had obediently stayed in Changyang Prefecture, my Huayan sect wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. But since you've taken the initiative to come here, it's not up to you to decide. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Who knows who will live and who will die today?" Jianqin's face was filled with disdain. A cruel smile appeared on Qing Fei's face. His gaze swept past the destroyed gate and hall, and he disdainfully said, "Changyang Shoten, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you've learned some skills over the years. 6 years have passed, and the enmity of my son's arm should be settled today. Cheng Fei took a step back and waved his hand. Go, don't take his life. A few of the experts standing behind Cheng Fei immediately took out their saint weapons, and their bodies turned into blurs as they quickly charged at Jianchen. They were actually all Earth Saint Masters. As Earth Saint Masters, they all had a certain level of insight. From the destruction of the gate and hall, they had already determined that Changyang Shoten was at least an Earth Saint Master. As a result, they didn't dare to underestimate him, and they all attacked together. A strong killing intent flashed through Jianchen's eyes. His right hand repeatedly pointed at the air, and azure sword qi shot out from his fingertips, shooting toward the Earth Saint Masters at lightning speed. The Earth Saint Masters of the Huayun sect didn't dare to be careless. They immediately waved their saint weapons to block the incoming sword qi. When the two collided, a clear ringing sound rang out, and the sword qi immediately dissipated. However, the Earth Saint Masters suddenly trembled, and their charging speed came to an abrupt halt. They then staggered back 3 steps before stabilizing themselves. Although the sword qi was only the size of a finger, it contained an extremely powerful force. Even with their strength as Earth Saint Masters, it was difficult for them to block it. The Huayun sect experts were greatly shocked. However, just as they stabilized themselves, several more beams of azure and violet sword qi tore through the air toward them. The experts hurriedly raised their saint weapons to block, but 3 of the weaker ones had their foreheads pierced by the azulate sword qi. They immediately collapsed to the ground with their eyes wide open. They had died with remaining grievances. Seeing this scene, an old man who had originally planned on watching from the back suddenly had a change in expression. He immediately yelled, "Go help them!" After saying that, he took the lead to charge at Jianchen. Behind him, the other experts who had been watching with folded arms also took out their saint weapons, following closely behind the old man as they charged at Jianchen. Chapter 448. After recovering from his shock, the Huayun sect master's face became gloomy. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. Changyang Prefecture's Changwuji had already given the Huayun sect a lot of pressure. Even though they now had 3 Heaven Saint Masters, they were still unable to suppress Changyang Prefecture. Now that another genius had appeared in Changyang Prefecture, Cheng Fei began to worry for the Huayun sect's future. Changyang Shoten is only 21 years old, but he already has the ability to fight against Earth Saint Masters. And from the looks of it, even among Earth Saint Masters, his strength can be considered at the peak. If such a person is allowed to grow, then our Huayun sect will be trampled under Changyang Prefecture's feet. Cheng Fei thought to himself. Soon after, a trace of viciousness appeared in his eyes. He immediately took out a piece of the mother-child twin jade from his space ring and crushed it, notifying the great elders who were cultivating in the back mountains. In a huge mountain behind the Huayun sect, the 3 Heaven Saint Masters of the Huayun sect were gathered. 2 of the great elders were taking turns to pass on their cultivation knowledge and experience to Saya, who had just become a Heaven Saint Master. At this moment, one of the great elders' expression suddenly changed. With a flip of his hand, a palm-sized piece of jade appeared in his hand. The jade had already been broken in half. Looking at the 2 halves of the jade, the other great elder and Saya's expression became somewhat serious. They naturally knew what the 2 halves of the jade represented. It seems that something has happened in the Huayun sect. Senior brother, you stay here and teach Saya. I'll go to the front mountains to see what's going on, said one of the great elders. Another great elder stood up from the stone bench and said in a deep voice, I think something big must have happened. Otherwise, Cheng Fei wouldn't have crushed the mother-child twin jade. Let's go and take a look. The 3 Heaven Saint Masters of the Huayun sect immediately left the cave and flew to the front. At the entrance of the Huayun sect, several loud sounds rang out. Over 10 Earth Saint Masters who had surrounded Jianchen were sent flying by Jianchen, vomiting blood. They smashed into the building behind them, creating a large hole in the wall. Are you really Changyang Shoten? The Huayan sect master stared at Jianqin with a rather pale face. He found it very difficult to accept what had just happened. Over a dozen Earth Saint Masters had actually been defeated by Changyang Shoten. Even though this was happening right in front of him, he still felt like it was a dream. It was so unbelievable that he even began to doubt the identity of the person in front of him. Was he really Changyang Shoten, who was around the same age as Cheng Mingxiang? Over a dozen pale-faced Earth Saint Masters walked out of the hole in the wall and stood before Cheng Fei in the end. Their gazes toward Jianqin were filled with shock. They had also been stunned by Jianqin's strength. Sect Master Cheng, right now, I, Changyang Shoten, am standing right here. If your Huayun sect has any ability, then feel free to use it. Let's see what you can do to me. Jianqin expressionlessly said, Changyang Shoten, with your arrogant cultivation, our Huayan sect is not a place where you can behave atrociously. Once the Grand Elder comes, you can only obediently wait to be captured. An Earth Saint Master standing behind Cheng Fei angrily shouted. Just as he finished speaking, 3 powerful auras spread out from the back of the Huayan sect. 3 white-robed figures quickly flew over from the distance, finally landing in front of the Huayan sect's upper echelon. Seeing the 3 Heaven Saint Masters arrive, the Huayan sect disciples immediately knelt on one knee and loudly shouted, "We greet the Grand Elder!" The voices of several hundred people overlapped, forming a huge sound wave that reverberated through the mountain peak. It was an incomparably magnificent sight. "Who are you?" Saya glared at Jianqin and asked in a deep voice. His face was somewhat gloomy, treating the surrounding disciples as if they were nothing. The 2 Grand Elders did not say anything. Their gazes swept over the destroyed gate and the hall behind it a few times. Their expressions became more and more serious. The 2 of them had been Heaven Saint Masters for many years now, so they could clearly sense the extremely dense fire elemental energy in the air. Controlling the energy of the world was an ability that only Heaven Saint Masters could use. Grand Elders, Master, he is the culprit who cut off my son's arm, Changyang Shoten. The sect master of the Huayan sect, Cheng Fei, gnashed his teeth as he spoke. Now that the 3 Heaven Saint Masters of the Huayan sect had arrived, he was filled with confidence. He no longer feared Jianqin. Hearing that, a gleam of light flashed through the eyes of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters of the Huayan sect. They studied Jianqin, and Saya immediately lost his cool. He yelled, "Changyang Shangtian, you really are bold. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to walk it. There's no door to hell, but you insist on barging in. Since you've come to my Huayun sect today, stay here." In Saya's heart, his resentment for Jianqin was extremely strong. Yesterday, it was precisely because of Jianqin that he had lost all face in front of Chang Wuji in front of so many Huayan sect disciples. He was still brooding over it. "Saya, shut your mouth." One of the Grand Elders frowned and shouted at Saya. His tone was somewhat strict. Saya's neck shrunk back and he immediately stopped talking. Although he was also a Heaven Saint Master, the 2 Grand Elders still held great prestige in his heart. He did not dare to resist their words at all. One of the Grand Elders looked at Jianqin with a complicated expression. He asked with uncertainty, "Are you really the 4th young master of Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten?" "Correct. I am Changyang Shoten," said Jianqin. Having received confirmation, the 2 Grand Elders looked at each other, a trace of shock in their eyes. After a moment of hesitation, one of the Grand Elders said, "Changyang Shoten, have you come because of what happened yesterday?" "That's only the first reason. The second reason is that your Huayan sect relied on its strength to force me to leave my home. The new enmity from yesterday and the old grudges of the past will all be settled today," said Jianqin coldly. "Changyang Shoten, the 2 of us have heard of what happened back then. although it was caused by Cheng Mingxiang, and he did not know how to act appropriately. You did not need to cut off his arm. After all, he is the next sect master of our Huayan sect. What face will our Huayan sect have left if you do this? One of the grand elders calmly said. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy, angry, or sad. Grand elder, there's no need to waste words with him. Just capture him. If we don't properly teach him a lesson, what face will our Huayan sect have left in the kingdom of Jessen? Cheng Fei was a bit impatient. He had long since wanted to avenge his son's arm. Now that the opportunity had finally come, he could not wait any longer. Shut your mouth! One of the grand elders angrily glared at Cheng Fei, scaring him into not daring to say another word. Afterwards, the grand elder turned to Jianqin and solemnly said, Changyang Shoten, how do you plan on settling this? Jianqin pondered for a moment before saying, The Huayan sect is the founding minister of the kingdom of Jessen. It has great merits, and I don't want to go too far. How about this? I'll give you two choices. The first is for me to destroy the Huayan sect and erase it from the kingdom of Jessen. The expressions of all the Huayan sect disciples became extremely ugly. As for the newly advanced Heaven Saint Master, Saya, his face was ashen from anger. His eyes seemed like they were about to spit fire. If it were not for the presence of the grand elders, he would have already attacked. Even the two grand elders' expressions became extremely ugly. Jianqin continued, The second choice is for the three of you to have a great battle with me. If you can defeat me, all of your past grievances will be written off. If you lose, I want the two of you to personally cut off Saya's right arm as payment for what he did yesterday. Furthermore, I want you to abolish the Huayan sect's current sect master. Saya finally could not endure it any longer and angrily shouted, You've gone too far! Changyang Shoten, you're far too arrogant. What kind of place do you take my Huayan sect for? Even if Chang Wuji personally came, he wouldn't dare to say such a thing. Who do you think you are? The Huayan sect master's expression also became extremely ugly after hearing Jianqin's words. Even the surrounding Huayan sect disciples were stunned by Jianqin's words. They all looked at Jianqin as if they were looking at an idiot. The two grand elders walked out at the same time and expressionlessly said, Since it's like that, then let's have a spar. Let's see the skills of the Changyang Prefecture's fourth young master. Let's go. After saying that, the two grand elders both took to the air and flew off into the distance. They pulled the battlefield out of the Huayan sect's territory so that it wouldn't affect the Huayan sect. Jianqin wasn't willing to fall behind either. A layer of dense wind elemental energy instantly formed around his body, wrapping around him as he shot into the sky even faster than the two Huayan sect grand elders. Seeing this, everyone from the Huayan sect, including Saya, was shocked. As for Cheng Fei, his mouth was so wide that it could fit an egg. No, this is definitely impossible. How can he fly? That's an ability that only Heaven Saint Masters possess. The Huayan sect master's voice trembled as a chill rose up from his body. Chapter 449. Within the palace of the Jessen Kingdom, the king of the Jessen Kingdom was seated at a table in a dazzling hall with a smile on his face as he conversed with two people across from him. One of them was young, and the other was old. Both of them wore luxurious robes and exuded a unique aura that came naturally from being in a high position for a long time. Their mannerisms were natural and magnanimous. These two people were a prime minister and a prince of the heavenly Eagle Kingdom. They had departed from the kingdom of Jessen when the war in the kingdom of Jessen had just ended. After traveling through the night, they had finally arrived at the palace of the kingdom of Jessen to meet the king of the kingdom of Jessen. The king of the kingdom of Jessen had been very busy these past 2 days. He had only received the envoys from the 4 kingdoms yesterday afternoon. There were 2 main reasons for the envoy's visit. The first was to inquire about the relationship between the Qin Empire and the Kingdom of Jessen, as well as to meet the imperial advisor of the Qin Empire. The second reason was to discuss the compensation for the kingdom of Jessen. However, the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire had already left, so the envoys naturally didn't get to meet the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. However, the king of the kingdom of Jessen had purposely divulged some important information to them. The reason the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire had come to the kingdom of Jessen's aid was actually because they were under the orders of an imperial protector of the Qin Empire. The identity of the imperial protector of the Qin Empire had frightened the envoys so much that cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. They were all of high status in their respective kingdoms, so they naturally understood what the identity of the imperial protector represented. Due to the deterrence of the identity of the imperial protector of the Qin Empire, the subsequent negotiations went smoothly. The 4 kingdoms compensated the kingdom of Jessen with a sizable sum of money and a large number of magic cores. The Anless Kingdom, the Blue Wind Kingdom, and the Hidden Dragon Kingdom had already compensated the kingdom of Jessen with more than 50 million purple coins. With this amount of compensation, the Jessen Kingdom would be able to quickly recover from the war that had just taken place in the Jessen Kingdom. However, the Pingyang Kingdom's compensation was the least out of all the other kingdoms, only a mere 1 million purple gold coins. The ambassador from the Pingyang Kingdom had a sullen expression as he explained the situation to the Jessen Kingdom's king. The treasury of the Pingyang Kingdom had been completely ransacked by a mysterious expert. Everything of value had been taken away. The negotiations between the 5 kingdoms went smoothly and ended in just 2 hours. Then, the king of the kingdom of Jessen issued an order to release the captured king of the Pingyang Kingdom. Due to the special status of the king of the Pingyang Kingdom, he was not executed. Instead, he was locked up in the prison of the northern fortress, and his life was not in danger. After dealing with the matter of compensation from the 4 kingdoms, the king hadn't stopped to rest. Over the past 2 days, there had been countless envoys from the other kingdoms coming to visit him, making him very busy. But now, with the identity of the 2 people sitting in front of him, even the king of the Jessen Kingdom had to take them seriously and carefully receive them. The kingdom of Heavenly Eagle wasn't a kingdom that the kingdom of Jessen could afford to offend. The prime minister of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was the one conversing with the king of the kingdom of Jessen. The prince sitting at the side listened quietly and didn't interrupt. The prime minister of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was beating around the bush. He was trying to probe the relationship between the kingdom of Jessen and the Qin Empire, as well as the reason why the Qin Empire suddenly assisted the kingdom of Jessen in fending off the allied forces of the 4 kingdoms. With regards to this topic, the king of the kingdom of Jessen had already thought of an excuse that would be beneficial to the kingdom of Jessen. He also emphasized the identity of the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. Right now, the relationship between the kingdom of Jessen and the Qin Empire was still unclear. He didn't want to offend the kingdom of Heavenly Eagle. When they heard that the order to assist the kingdom of Jessen was given by the Qin Empire's imperial protector, the prime minister and prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom immediately became serious. Then the prime minister smiled and exchanged a few pleasantries with the king before revealing the second purpose of their visit. "Your Majesty, I've heard that your Princess Glan is already 20 years old and has yet to marry. Our king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom hopes that our 2 kingdoms can be allies for generations to come. Thus, this old subject is here to propose marriage. I hope that your Majesty can betroth the Princess Glan to the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom." The prime minister said amiably with a friendly smile on his face. Hearing this, the king of the kingdom of Jessen's expression changed slightly. He revealed a slightly troubled expression. This was because he had already decided to betroth the Princess Glan to the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. He had hoped to rope in this talented individual who was praised by even his imperial uncle. If something had happened to Changyang Shoten in the past few years, then the marriage would have been annulled. The king of the kingdom of Jessen would have been able to arrange another marriage for the Princess Glan. However, he had already received news that Changyang Shoten had returned 2 days ago. As a result, the marriage would have to be carried out according to the previous agreement. He could not break the agreement because the current Changyang prefecture was no longer the same as before. With Changyang Shoten's strength exposed, the status of Changyang prefecture in the kingdom of Jessen had risen as well. Even the imperial family did not dare to offend them. The most important reason was that the king of the kingdom of Jessen had suspected more than once that the Qin Empire was assisting the kingdom of Jessen because of Changyang prefecture. Only the Changyang ancestor, who had been missing for several decades, had this possibility. As a result, the king of the kingdom of Jessen did not dare to neglect Changyang prefecture at all. After a moment of silence, the Jessen kingdom's king said, "Prime Minister Che, you is this king's only daughter. At the same time, she is also this king's most beloved daughter. Allow me to discuss this with her and see what she thinks." "That's not a problem. Your Majesty is a good father. I admire you." Prime Minister Che chuckled without showing any displeasure. The prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom beside him did not show any displeasure either. He remained as calm as before. After that, the two sides exchanged a few pleasantries before the two envoys from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom left to rest. After the two left, the king of the Jessen Kingdom let out a long sigh and closed his eyes, rubbing his temples as if he had a headache. The king of the kingdom of Jessen was very interested in the marriage that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had proposed. If he could befriend the kingdom of Jessen, the kingdom of Jessen would definitely benefit greatly. It would play an extremely important role in the development of the kingdom of Jessen. If the Qin Empire has nothing to do with the Changyang ancestor, what should I do? Should I take the risk of offending the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and betroth you, to Changyang Shoten according to our previous agreement, or should I offend the Changyang prefecture and the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? The king softly murmured. With his position, he had to put the development of the kingdom of Jessen first. Although he loved his daughter dearly, there were some decisions that were not up to him. Although he knew that the fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture, Changyang Shoten, possessed extraordinary talent, he believed that Changyang Shoten would take a long time to truly mature. It would take at least a few decades and, at most, a century. It was very difficult for him to wait any longer. As for the Qin Empire, the king did not know why the Qin Empire was helping him. Perhaps it was because a senior from the kingdom of Jessen had some connection with the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. If they were willing to help him once, who could guarantee that they would help him a second time? He had to find a way out for the kingdom of Jessen. At the top of the mountain, the wind whistled through the sky, producing an ear-piercing shriek that sounded like the wailing of ghosts. 20 kilometers away from the Huayan sect's encampment, Jianqin stood in the air in luxurious white robes, coldly staring at the three people before him. "No wonder you're so arrogant. So you're already a heaven saint master." Saya stared at Jianqin with an unsightly expression. Her eyes were filled with jealousy. Jianqin did not even glance at Saya. Saya had only just become a heaven saint master, and her strength had not yet stabilized. Even among the first cycle Heaven Saint Masters, she was at the bottom. Jianqin expressionlessly stared at the two great elders. He indifferently said, "Do it. Don't blame me for not warning you. If you don't use your full strength, you'll lose very miserably." The two great elders did not become angry. Instead, their faces became serious. From the speed and density of the wind elemental energy in Jianqin's hands, they could tell that Jianqin's control over the energy of the world was greater than theirs. The two great elders looked at each other, understanding each other's thoughts with a single glance. They both took out their saint weapons at the same time. Both were swords of the same shape, and with a shake of their hands, they shot out two powerful sword chi at Jianqin. Saya did not dare fall behind. A huge sword appeared in her hand, and she actually quickly charged at Jianqin. Saya firmly believed that if he and the two great elders attacked together, Jianqin would definitely not be able to stop them. After all, his age was there for all to see. Jianshin's hands grabbed the air, and the fire elemental energy in the surroundings condensed at an unbelievable speed. In an instant, it condensed into 3 fire elemental swords that emitted a monstrous wave of heat. They turned into red streaks of light that shot toward the 3 great elders. Boom! A violent explosion rang out in the sky. Waves of fire shot out in all directions, turning the sky red. The violent energy waves completely devoured the surrounding clouds, and a small patch of blue appeared in the vast white sky. The 2 great elders' sword chi were scattered, and Saya's figure was obstructed. Saint Force surged out of her body, forming an energy barrier around her to block the surrounding waves of fire. Jianshin's figure moved, and under the guidance of the wind elemental energy, he quickly approached Saya. His right hand formed a palm, and the fire elemental energy in the surroundings rapidly condensed again, condensing into a powerful ball of elemental energy in front of his palm. You have no right to participate in a battle like this. Piss off, Jianshin coldly said, and then his palm shot out like lightning. The moment it approached Saya's chest, the yuan qi condensed in front of his palm suddenly erupted, breaking through Saya's defenses with an unstoppable force and viciously striking Saya's chest. Uft. Saya immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly paled, and he lost control of his body. Like a kite with its string cut, he fell from the sky. Chapter 450. The expressions of the 2 great elders changed when they saw that Saya had been defeated in a single clash. Their opinion of Jianshin's strength increased once again. I never thought that he would possess strength that is no weaker than mine at such a young age. This is unbelievable, the 2 great elders thought to themselves. The 2 great elders fought at the same time. However, their hands did not stop moving at all. The 2 of them quickly charged toward Jianshin and swung their saint weapons at Jianshin with powerful pulses of energy, preventing him from harming Saya any further. Jianshin's eyes suddenly became purplish-green. Countless trees in the forest below exploded, filling the air with wood shavings. They shot toward the 2 great elders like moths to a flame, completely enveloping the 2 great elders under their shocked gazes. At this moment, Saya had also stabilized his falling body. He once again condensed the energy of the world to keep himself afloat in the air. His face had already become extremely gloomy, and his gaze towards Jianshin was filled with coldness. His mind was still constantly replaying what Jianshin had said earlier. You don't have the right to participate in a battle like this. Piss off. At this moment, Saya felt deeply humiliated. The disdain in Jianshin's voice was just so obvious. This was a heavy blow to Saya, who had just become a Heaven Saint Master and had stepped into the ranks of the peak experts of the continent. He had been defeated in just a single round. Moreover, he had been defeated by a young man who was not even in his 20s. Changyang Shoten. Saya's eyes were filled with resentment as he stared at Jianshin in the air. He muttered Changyang Shoten's name through gritted teeth, as if he wanted to engrave the name deeply into his mind. In the air, the 2 great elders did not dare to be careless in the face of the dense rain of wood shavings. Saint Force surged out of their bodies, condensing into a barrier around them in a single moment. They could only use this method to block the dense rain of attacks. The dense rain of sawdust struck the 2 great elders, causing the barrier of Saint Force around them to violently tremble, as if it would shatter at any moment. The 2 great elders' expressions drastically changed. The power of the wood shavings had exceeded their imaginations. Without any hesitation, the 2 of them roared out at the same time. An even more surging Saint Force surged out of their bodies, forming an even more solid barrier around them. Only after the 2 of them used all their strength to maintain the barrier did they finally stabilize. However, this consumed an extremely large amount of their Saint Force, so they could not last very long. High Earth Tier battle skill, Flame Dazzle! One of the great elders roared out. The fire element in the surroundings rapidly condensing into a huge fireball with a diameter of 2 meters in front of him. It shot toward Genshin with intense heat. The other great elder used this opportunity to charge out of the encirclement of wood shavings and shot toward Genshin. He roared out, "Space-shattering slash!" As he spoke, the huge sword in his hand shone with a dazzling yellow light. It slashed toward Genshin with surging energy. Genshin slowly moved his hands in front of him. With his mind, the wood shavings in the air began to dance in an orderly manner. In the end, they actually condensed into 2 huge swords that radiated with azure and violet sword chi. Both swords were 10 meters long and half a meter wide. Swish! With a flash of purple and green light, 2 giant swords made of grass and wood shot toward the 2 of them with an ear-piercing sound. Boom! One of the huge swords collided with a huge fireball, creating a huge explosion. The fireball exploded and turned into a wave of fire that wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The entire sky turned red, and the thin clouds in the surroundings were completely evaporated by the intense heat. At the same time, the other huge sword collided with the great elder, charging toward Genshin. The 10-meter-long sword was shattered by the great elder's high, earth-tier battle skill. But the great elder's charging figure was also stopped. The high earth-tier battle skill that he had been preparing was also broken. Take another one of my space-shattering slashes. The great elder roared and once again used the same earth-tier battle skill to slash at Genshin. A cold smile appeared on Genshin's face. If it was a heaven-tier battle skill, even a low heaven-tier battle skill would be able to injure him. However, an earth-tier battle skill would hardly be a threat to him. Bang! Bang! Several large trees suddenly exploded, filling the sky with wood shavings. Along the way, the shavings condensed into a 10-meter-long sword that shot into the sky. Following a huge explosion, the 2 collided once more, blocking the great elder's space-shattering slashes. After using a high-grade Earth-class battle skill twice, both of which had been so easily blocked, the Huayun Sect's Grand Elder finally lost his patience. The space-splitting saber slash was already his strongest battle skill. If even that was unable to do anything to his opponent, then there was nothing else he could do. Damn it, let's see how many times you can block my attacks. Space-shattering slashes. The veins on the Grand Elder's forehead throbbed violently. He couldn't even deal with a rising star in his 20s. This made him lose face, and he used the same battle technique for the 3rd time. Junior apprentice brother, I'll help you. Flame God Sword Art, 7th style. The other great elder charged at Genshin, holding a fiery red sword. The 2 of them attacked Genshin from both sides. It's time to end this. Genshin murmured. The violet and azure light in his eyes gradually faded away as a layer of dense, almost tangible sword chi slowly shot out from his right hand. Genshin charged towards one of them with the origin energy of the sword spirits in his hand. The origin energy of the sword spirits left behind a dazzling streak of light in the air as it swept over with lightning-like speed, colliding with the saint weapon of the great elder who had used the space-splitting slash. Ding! With a light sound, the violet and azure sword chi's origin energy cut through the great elder's saint weapon like tofu. The great elder immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and quickly retreated in horror. His face was full of shock. At this moment, the other great elder also approached Genshin, the yellow sword in his hand, chopping down with great force. Genshin swung the origin energy of the sword spirits to meet the great elder's attack without any fear. When the 2 collided, the great elder's face changed greatly. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his body rapidly retreating as if he had been heavily injured. How is this possible? You actually destroyed my saint weapon. The other great elder involuntarily cried out in shock, his face filled with disbelief. Genshin didn't let the 2 of them go. wrapped in wind elemental energy. He quickly chased after one of them. The violet and azure sword spirit's origin energy chopped down once again, forcing the great elder to raise his saint weapon to block. Ding! With a light sound, another 2-finger-sized gap appeared in the great elder's saint weapon. With his saint weapon damaged one after another, his injuries became even more severe. He spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. At this moment, the 2 great elders fully understood the power of the violet and azure sword spirit's origin energy. Seeing that Jianchen still wanted to continue his attacks, the other great elder's face changed greatly. He hurriedly yelled, "Changyang Shoten, stop!" Jianchen stopped. His entire body was wrapped in a layer of dense wind elemental energy. His heroic figure stood between the heavens and earth. The origin energy of the violet and azure sword spirits in his right hand fluctuated, making him seem like a mighty god of war. Jianchen emotionlessly looked at the great elder who had spoken, but he didn't say anything. The great elder looked at the gap in his saint weapon before looking at the other great elder, who was even more heavily injured. He could not help but let out a long sigh. After hesitating for a very long time, he finally unwillingly said, "We admit defeat." After he finished speaking, the supreme elder seemed to have aged a lot, and his expression became somewhat dispirited. The other great elder stabilized himself in the air. His face had also become rather dazed. He did not wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth, allowing the blood to drip onto his clothes. His eyes were empty. No matter who it was, this result was very difficult to accept. 2 veteran Heaven Saint Masters had actually been defeated by a junior. The most difficult thing to accept was that this junior was only in his 20s. "Sai, I'm old. I can't keep using it. Changyang Shoten, you've won. Both of us have been defeated by you." One of the great elders sighed, his face very dispirited. At this moment, Saya also flew up from below. She looked at the 2 great elders in disbelief as her heart churned. Jianchen withdrew the origin energy of the violet and azure sword spirits. Crossing his arms, he said, "Elders, let's go back and deal with this matter. Now that it's settled, I should return as well." The 2 great elders sighed again and nodded. Without saying anything else, they turned around and flew back to the Huayan sect's encampment. At this moment, all the disciples of the Huayan sect had put down what they were doing and gathered in front of the sect. They looked at the distant sky and discussed spiritedly. The entire mountain was buzzing with activity. When the 3 great elders and Jianchen landed in front of the sect, the originally chattering disciples immediately quieted down. Although there were over 1,000 people gathered in such a large place, it was strangely quiet. However, when they saw the condition of the 4 of them, all the disciples were astonished. Their faces were full of disbelief. Of the 4, only Jianchen was in good condition. He did not seem to have changed at all. As for the 2 great elders and the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, their faces were pale. Traces of blood could be seen at the corner of their mouths. The 2 great elders' dispirited expressions could be clearly seen by anyone with some eyesight. Chapter 451. Seeing this scene, Cheng Fei's originally confident expression changed. He suddenly had a thought that he did not even dare to think about. Cheng Fei quickly walked up to the 2 grand elders and nervously asked, "Grand elders, what is the result?" Cheng Fei had already guessed the answer from the grand elders' expressions, but he did not dare to believe it. One of the grand elders sighed and guiltily looked at Cheng Fei. After a long silence, he finally said, "Cheng Fei, from today onwards, you are no longer the sect master of the Huayan sect." The grand elder's words were extremely heavy, and his face was filled with helplessness. The Huayan sect had stood in the kingdom of Jessen for several hundred years, and was known as the #1 sect in the kingdom of Jessen. In the past, they were only slightly weaker than the imperial family, but now that they had 3 Heaven Saint Masters, they were even stronger than the imperial family. Yet, with such strength, they had actually been forced to resign in front of all the disciples of the Huayan sect. To the Huayan sect, this was definitely a humiliation that could never be washed away. Ever since the Huayan sect had been established, it had experienced countless storms. What kind of storms had it not seen before? But it had never been in such a miserable state like today, especially when the opponent was a young man in his 20s. This was something that no one in the Huayan sect could accept. Cheng Fei's face instantly paled, and he was completely dumbfounded. His face was filled with disbelief. 2 Grand Elders and 3 Heaven Saint Masters had actually been defeated by the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. No, how is this possible? This is impossible. Cheng Fei was at a loss. He truly found it difficult to accept this fact. This was because he knew that Changyang Shoten was even younger than his son, Cheng Mingxiang. Moreover, he had only condensed a saint weapon and become a saint 6 years ago. But now, in just a few short years, this little saint had leaped over the Dragon Gate and become a Heaven Saint Master. Moreover, he had defeated 3 Heaven Saint Masters without being injured at all. This was just too shocking. Cheng Fei even began to suspect that the Supreme Elder and Sia's trio were acting together. All of the Huayan sect's disciples were stupefied. Many of their mouths were wide open as they stared at the main characters in disbelief. Even ordinary disciples like them were unable to accept this result. Alas! One of the Grand Elders raised his head and sighed. His expression was dispirited, and he seemed to have aged greatly. He said in a low voice, "Changyang Shoten, you should be satisfied now, right? The matters of the past have been written off. I hope our Huayan sect and Changyang Prefecture can still maintain the friendship of the past." After this battle, the 2 Supreme Elders had a clear understanding of Jianqin's strength. Jianqin's unprecedented talent and unparalleled battle prowess had already caused them to feel a deep sense of fear. In the future, they had every reason to believe that Jianqin would definitely be able to become a saint ruler. Jianqin stood proudly with his arms crossed. He looked at the gloomy Saya and said, "Supreme Elders, you seem to have forgotten one thing. There is still an arm that hasn't been removed." The 2 Supreme Elders' expressions changed. Saya was already a Heaven Saint Master, and this was an extremely important asset to the Huayan sect. They definitely did not wish for Saya to be injured in the slightest. If his right arm was cut off, Saya's strength would be greatly reduced. Even if he was a Heaven Saint Master, he would still be in existence at the bottom, unable to use his full strength. Changyang Shoten, Changyang Prefecture, and our Huayan sect have already been friends for several hundred years. I hope you can be lenient. Although Saya was in the wrong yesterday, it did not lead to a disaster. Please let him go. One of the Supreme Elders gave in and used a pleading tone. Jianqin was just too strong. The 2 of them had already lost their previous might. No, Jianqin said without any hesitation. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he said, "You should rejoice that yesterday's matter did not lead to a disaster. Otherwise, even if your Huayan sect was the founding hero of the Huayan sect, I definitely would not have held back. I will definitely take Saya's arm. If you don't do it, then I'll do it myself. At that time, it won't be so easy. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to keep his life." The 2 Supreme Elders' expressions became extremely unsightly. They dilly-dallied for a long time, but still did not do it. They really could not bear to see the Huayan sect lose a peak expert. As for Jianqin, he was also someone they did not dare to offend. They were afraid that they would vent their anger on Jianqin and cause the Huayan sect to suffer even greater losses. Suddenly, Saya shouted, "Fine! Changyang Shoten, you want my right arm, right? I'll give it to you." As he said that, Saya's left hand formed a palm. Saint force surged out of his body, and he directly chopped at his right arm. Uft! Blood filled the air as Saya's entire right arm was chopped off. The intense pain caused Saya's facial muscles to twist. He resisted the urge to make the slightest sound. Changyang Shoten, is this enough? Saya's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Jianqin with hatred. A cold smile appeared on Jianqin's face. Saya, I won't ask about what happened in the past. But in the future, you'd best know your place. If you dare do anything harmful to my Changyang prefecture, I'll make you regret it. I hope you won't implicate the Huayan sect. Saya tightly clenched his teeth, not making a sound. He did not have the strength to speak. At this moment, Saya suddenly felt that this scene was extremely similar to what had happened in Changyang Prefecture yesterday. He was the Jianchen in front of him, and the Huayun sect disciples around him were the upper echelons of Changyang Prefecture, as well as the guards. If he hadn't gone overboard yesterday, perhaps he wouldn't have ended up like this today. Changyang Shoten, are you satisfied now? Asked the Grand Elder with a gloomy expression. Jianqin smiled freely and cupped his hands. Since this matter has been resolved, then I should leave. Goodbye. Just as Jianqin finished speaking, a figure flew over from the distance, quickly landing in front of Jianqin. This person wore a set of blue robes. It was the housekeeper of Changyang Prefecture, Chang Wuji. Chang Wuji was worried that Jianqin would cause too much of a ruckus, so he had hurriedly rushed over from Changyang Prefecture in an attempt to stop him. But when he saw the scene in front of him, he immediately relaxed. Although the Huayun sect was in a sorry state, the result was still acceptable. Chang Bo, why have you come? Jianqin looked at Chang Bo with a puzzled expression. He respected Chang Bo from the bottom of his heart. Chang Wuji examined Jianqin. Seeing that Jianqin hadn't suffered any injuries, he couldn't help smiling. Fourth young master, may I ask how the matter has been resolved? Jianqin told Chang Bo how the matter had been resolved. After hearing it, Chang Bo sighed. It seems that this old servant has come for nothing. Fourth young master already knows how to act appropriately. Saying that, Chang Wuji glanced at Saya, who had lost his right arm. A trace of schadenfreude appeared in his eyes. The Huayun sect had just recently gained a Heaven Saint Master, and all the disciples of the Huayun sect were extremely proud of it. But now only a few days had passed, and this Heaven Saint Master had died. This was not only a blow to the Huayun sect, but also a humiliation. Jianqin chuckled and said, Chang Bo, if there's nothing else, let's go home. Chang Wuji nodded and clasped his hands towards the two Huayun sect grand elders. He smiled and said, Tianqing Saber, Tianqing Jian, if you have time in the future, you're welcome to visit our Changyang Prefecture. Farewell. We won't see you out. The two grand elders' expressions were very ugly as they expressionlessly said. Afterwards, Jianqin and Chang Wuji shot through the air, leaving behind the Huayun sect's disciples who stood there in a daze. Today's matter had dealt a heavy blow to all of them. This was especially true for the disciples who were incomparably proud of the fact that their sect had gained 3 Heaven Saint Masters. This was an unacceptable reality. Although the news of the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture bravely charging into the Huayun sect by himself hadn't spread, the imperial family who had spies all over the country had received the news immediately. That afternoon, in the imperial palace of the Kingdom of Jessen, the Prime Minister of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had found the King of the Kingdom of Jessen for the 2nd time. He had once again brought up the matter of a marriage alliance with an extremely sincere attitude. The king was extremely moved by the marriage alliance with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was the largest country in a radius of several tens of thousands of kilometers. Its strength was even greater than the Kingdom of Jessen's peak. If they could form a marriage alliance with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, it would be a great help to the weakened Kingdom of Jessen that had just ended the war. However, with the revelation of Chang Wuji's strength, the status of the Changyang Prefecture in the king's heart had also risen. Adding on the fact that the 4th young master was a peerless genius and the missing Changyang ancestor who was very likely to have connections with the Qin Empire, it was very difficult for the king to make a decision on who to marry his precious daughter to. If he betrothed his daughter to the Changyang Prefecture, It would be equivalent to making a bet. No one could predict the final outcome, and there was a chance that he would offend the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The gains would not make up for the losses. However, if he were to form a marriage alliance with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the Kingdom of Jessin would immediately receive limitless benefits. These were two completely different concepts. A guard in black armor ran in without being reported by anyone. He carried a red flag on his back. This flag possessed special authority in the imperial palace of the Kingdom of Jessin. Only when there was an extremely urgent matter that required an immediate meeting with the king would this flag be carried on his back. Under any circumstances, he could directly meet the king without having to report anything. No one dared to stop him. "Your Majesty, an urgent letter has come from the Huayan sect. It's extremely urgent." The guard in black armor quickly ran into the hall and knelt on one knee as he reported. Gazing at the flag on the back of the black-armored guard, the king's expression instantly turned solemn. The palace maid by the side quickly walked over, received the letter, and presented it to the king respectfully. The king received the letter from the palace maid. He did not even have the time to exchange pleasantries with the Prime Minister of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. He immediately opened the letter and began to read it. Suddenly, His Majesty the King stood up from his chair. His hands trembled as he held the letter in his hands. His face was full of shock, and his eyes were wide open. "Your Majesty, what happened?" The Prime Minister, sitting across from him, asked curiously. The king acted as if he did not hear the Prime Minister's words at all. He repeatedly read the contents of the letter several times before exhaling deeply in order to suppress the shock in his heart. He then quickly walked out of the hall and ordered, "Men, prepare a large gift. This king will immediately make a trip to Lore City. Tell the commander of the Black Armored Army, by Dao, to come see me immediately." The Prime Minister also stood up. Looking at the king's back, he said, "Your Majesty, the marriage alliance between our two kingdoms." Chapter 452. Looking at the king, who had already disappeared through the door, Prime Minister Che muttered to himself, "So what if there is an engagement? In any case, they are not married and can cancel it at any time. My Heavenly Eagle Kingdoms, Prince cannot come here for nothing." From his conversation with the Emperor of the Kingdom of Jessin, Che Cheng had understood that the relationship between the Qin Empire and the Kingdom of Jessin wasn't as close as he had thought. This made him feel much less apprehensive. The matter of Jianqin causing a ruckus in the Huayan sect didn't spread because the Grand Elders of the Huayan sect had already said that if anyone dared to spread this news, they would be expelled from the sect and would also be severely punished. If the Huayan sect wanted to maintain its original position in the Kingdom of Jessin, this matter couldn't be spread no matter what. Otherwise, if outsiders learned that the Huayan sect couldn't even deal with the fourth young master of Changyang Prefecture by himself, the Huayan sect's reputation would plummet. That would be very detrimental to the sect's future development. As for Changyang Prefecture, it would benefit from this. Not only would its reputation rise, but it would also easily surpass the Huayan sect. The two Grand Elders were unwilling to see such an outcome. Jianqin and Chang Bo had already returned to Changyang Prefecture. Right now, only Chang Bo, Changyang Ba, and Bai Yuntian knew that Jianqin had caused a ruckus in the Huayan sect. However, they didn't spread this news. Instead, they were inwardly excited. Who would have thought that the incomparably powerful Huayan sect would be completely suppressed by their own son? Jianqin's battle accomplishments and strength made Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian, his parents, feel deeply proud. Following this, Jianqin peacefully stayed in Changyang Prefecture, rarely going out. He spent almost all of his time by his mother's side, chatting with her. As for the white tiger, because it had taken a lot of heavenly treasures, it hadn't completely digested the medicinal effects. It was lying on the bed in Jianqin's room, curled up and sleeping soundly. However, the white tiger's growth rate was indeed very fast. Jianqin had already determined that the white tiger's current strength had already reached the rank of tier two magic beasts from the aura emitted from its body. As long as it was given a few more days, it would be able to smoothly step into the rank of Tier 3 magic beast. In the eastern part of Lore City, in a luxurious inn, a young man of about 27 or 28 years of age was sitting at a table, leisurely drinking wine. His gaze was somewhat unfocused as he stared blankly at the busy streets. A waiter walked over with a plate of fragrant magical beast meat in his hands. He gently placed the plate on the table, nodding and bowing as he said, "Sir, your dishes have been served. Do you have any other orders?" Be it the waiter or the manager of the inn, they were all very familiar with this young man in a fiery red robe. This was because this young man had already stayed in this inn for an entire month. He stayed in the best room and ate the best dishes. Not only was he very rich, but he was also very forthright and generous. From time to time, he would reward people with gold coins. In the past month, whether it was the manager of the inn or the waiter of the inn, they had all received a considerable amount of money as a reward. It was equivalent to a year's worth of hard work. As a result, everyone in the inn treated this young man as a god of wealth. The young man waved his hand and dismissed the waiter. Afterwards, he drank alone and ate the delicacies on the table. I wonder how I can find Jianshin. With Jianshin's identity and strength, he should be very renowned in Lore City. Why hasn't anyone heard the name Jianshin after asking around for so long? Is Jianshin not his real name? The young man murmured to himself in a voice that only he could hear. It had already been a month since he arrived in Lore City. After the mercenary tournament, Jianshin had only told him to find him in the Jessin Kingdom's Lore City. As for where he would be in Lore City, there was no mention of it. Let's wait patiently. Jianshin should have just returned from the sacred grounds. It'll take him several months to get here from Mercenary City unless he uses a space gate. The young man murmured to himself. The young man murmured again. After that, he stopped talking and slowly tasted the delicacies on the table alone. At the same time, two middle-aged men rode two Class 3 magical beasts to the fortress on the border of the Kingdom of Jessin. They slowly made their way towards the dilapidated fortress. The two middle-aged men were both in their 40s. One of them was bald, and his upper body was naked. He was tall and sturdy, and the muscles on his body were bulging. They were very distinct and gave people a strong visual impact. The other middle-aged man looked more scholarly. He wore a light green robe, and his long black hair was casually draped over his shoulders. Although he had a scholarly aura, his eyes were flashing with a sharp light. "Yunjiang, look. There's a fortress up ahead. That should be the Kingdom of Jessin, right?" The burly man pointed at the dilapidated fortress. Hearing this, Yunjiang took out a map from his space belt and looked at it for a while. Slowly nodding his head, he said, "That's right. According to the map, the Jessin Kingdom is indeed in front of us." Looking at the battered state of the fortress, it must have just experienced a great battle. There is even a faint smell of blood in the air. The burly man exhaled deeply and sighed emotionally. "We finally arrived at the Kingdom of Jessin after half a year of traveling. Let's not think too much about it. Let's go into the city and rest. It's been a long time since we've had a good meal. Once we're full, we'll slowly make our way to Lore City." Outside of Lore City, 5 people of different ages and dressed in luxurious robes were walking on the official road at the pace of ordinary people. They looked ordinary, but each of them was emitting an inexplicable aura that imperceptibly affected the surrounding mercenaries and caravans. Anyone who passed by the 5 of them would subconsciously avoid them, not daring to come close at all. 10 kilometers ahead, the tall walls of Lore City could be clearly seen. Luo Tian held a jug of wine in his hand as he walked. He took a big gulp of strong liquor and turned to the old man beside him. "Shao Tian, Lore City is a first-class city. It's not small. How are we going to find the Imperial Protector when we get there?" Shao Tian shook his head. The Imperial Protector didn't say. "Let's talk about it when we get there." "Oh, right. Is the Imperial Protector really from the Kingdom of Jessin?" Why don't the powerhouses of the kingdom of Jessen know the name of the imperial protector? This is unbelievable, Qing Xiaofan said with a puzzled expression. I also find it strange. With the imperial protector's talent and strength, there should be no one in the Jessen kingdom who doesn't know of him. Yet he's so obscure and unknown. It's too inexplicable. The one who spoke was Dongi Junbai. Xiao Tian looked at them with dissatisfaction and frowned. All right, we're on the official road. Let's not talk about it. I believe this problem will be solved soon. Right at this moment, the ground began to tremble slightly. Not long after, a series of galloping sounds came from behind. A large group of cavalrymen dressed in black armor, all riding on magical beast mounts, sprinted over from behind. Along the way, they kicked up a cloud of dust, like a rolling yellow dragon that stretched for several kilometers. Several large flags were planted in the middle of this group of cavalrymen, causing the expressions of all the mercenaries and merchants to change. That's the black armored army of the imperial family. Quick, move out of the way. The mercenaries and merchants walking on the official road turned pale with fright as they hurriedly controlled their carriages to move to the side, opening up the wide road for the black armored army to pass through. Soon after, they all looked at the black armored army that was galloping past them with astonishment, their hearts filled with doubt. The black armored army is the strongest army that protects the imperial family. Normally, they wouldn't go out at all. What's going on today? The entire black armored army was mobilized and in such a hurry. Could it be that something big has happened? Many mercenaries and caravans began to guess in their hearts. At this moment, the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire also stopped and looked back at the black armored army that was galloping towards them. Isn't that the king of the kingdom of Jessen? Why is he here? Is he here to look for us? Luo Tian said with some surprise. The marching speed of the black armored army was very fast, and it didn't take long for them to close in on the 5 imperial advisors. At this time, the Jessen kingdom's king, who was also riding a magical beast and surrounded by several black armored army experts, suddenly noticed the 5 imperial advisors on the side of the road. With a look of shock, he immediately shouted, "Stop!" Soon, the black armored army that was galloping at high speed stopped. The king of the kingdom of Jessen immediately jumped off his magical beast and walked quickly to the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. With a warm smile on his face, he cupped his hands and said, I didn't expect to meet the 5 imperial advisors here. What a coincidence! The experts of the black armored army, following behind the king, also recognized the 5 imperial advisors and cupped their hands in salute. Your Majesty, you seem to be in a hurry. May I ask what has happened? Dongi Junbai asked curiously. The king chuckled and said, You may not believe me if I tell you, but an unprecedented genius has appeared in our kingdom of Jessen. He has reached the Heaven Saint Master level at such a young age and fought against 3 Heaven Saint Masters alone. Not only did he come out unscathed, he even heavily injured his opponents. I find it hard to believe. Hearing this, the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire looked at each other with a strange expression. Xiao Tian immediately asked, Your Majesty, may I ask who this person is? He is the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. The king did not hide anything and said with a chuckle. He had his own thoughts. With the talent Changyang Shoten had displayed, the Qin Empire would definitely spare no effort to rope him in. Moreover, Changyang Shoten was engaged to his daughter, so he was not an outsider. Once Changyang Shoten had a relationship with the Qin Empire, the kingdom of Jessen would benefit greatly. They could even use Changyang Shoten's relationship with the kingdom of Jessen to climb up to the Qin Empire. The 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. Chapter 453. Afterward, the king of the kingdom of Jessen and the 5 imperial advisors entered Lore City together. They passed through the streets of Lore City for a while before stopping at the gates of Changyang Prefecture. The surrounding black-armored army immediately spread out to guard the surroundings, ensuring the king's safety. Although the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire were present, and basically no one could harm the king of the Kingdom of Jesson, the Black Armored Army still carried out their duties. The commander of the Black Armored Army, Bai Dao, stared at the grand gates of Changyang Prefecture with a complicated expression. He was filled with all sorts of emotions, but he didn't know what to feel because he had already learned quite a few things from the king. Changyang Prefecture had already received news of the king's arrival, so the gates were wide open. All the upper echelons of Changyang Prefecture gathered at the entrance to welcome the king. Changyang Ba and Chang Bo stood at the very front. The second row was made up of the elders of the prefecture, while the third row was made up of Genshin and his aunts. "Welcome to my Changyang clan, Your Majesty. Your arrival truly brings light to my Changyang clan." The leader of the Changyang clan bowed. The patriarch of Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Ba, immediately went up to welcome the king with a smile. Chang Bo followed behind Changyang Ba. The king received a gift from a black-armored army guard beside him and personally handed it to Changyang Ba. He smiled. "It's been many years since I've been to Lore City. It's rare that I have time today, so I've specially come to take a look. I hope I won't disturb you all." Changyang Ba chuckled and exchanged a few pleasantries with the king. Suddenly, his eyes caught sight of the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire behind him. His expression immediately changed and became solemn. He hurriedly clasped his hands and said, "I never thought that the imperial advisors would be here as well. Our Changyang Prefecture has truly neglected you. Please come in." Changyang Ba's expression became much more solemn in front of the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. He didn't dare to slight them in the slightest. Chang Bo also clasped his hands and greeted the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he warmly invited them into Changyang Prefecture. If the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire were to be guests in Changyang Prefecture, it would be a great honor for Changyang Prefecture. When the guards and a few elders of Changyang Prefecture discovered that even the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire had come, they all became extremely excited generals of Changyang Prefecture. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire didn't put on any airs in front of Changyang Ba and Chang Bo's enthusiasm. They all returned the greetings with smiles on their faces and were very polite. Their attitude towards them was much more cordial than when they were in the imperial palace. Soon after, the king and the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire entered Changyang Prefecture at the same time. At this time, the king suddenly said, "Changyang Ba, I heard that Changyang Shoten has come back. I wonder where he is. Can I meet him? Speaking of which, I haven't seen this future son-in-law of mine even once." "Ha!" Changyang Ba's face revealed a trace of a smile, but his heart was as clear as snow. He looked at Genshin, who was behind a dozen elders, and said with a smile, "Xianger, why don't you come out and greet His Majesty? Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call him father-in-law." Chang Bo suddenly said with a smile on his face. Hearing this, the king was slightly startled. Then he laughed heartily. Changyang Ba also laughed a few times on the side, appearing to be very happy. The dozen elders moved aside to make a path. Genshin, who was wearing a white robe, walked out in large strides. He came to the front of the king of the Kingdom of Jesson and cupped his hands. With a smile on his face, he said in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, "Changyang Shoten greets Your Majesty." The king carefully sized up Genshin. He saw that Genshin had short hair that was only an inch long. He was very handsome, and his exquisite facial features were so perfect that no one could find fault with them. Coupled with his white and tender skin that even women would be jealous of, he was the killer of all the girls in the world. Under his handsome appearance, he also had a resolute temperament. It was as if he had witnessed Genshin's growth and maturity, and was not a frivolous playboy. Good. Looking at this future son-in-law in front of him, the king became more and more satisfied. He said the word good 3 times in a row. As an emperor, he had seen countless people in his life. Naturally, he could tell that Jianqin was extraordinary. Seeing Jianqin in person was not as good as hearing about him. The moment he saw Jianqin in person, his evaluation of Jianqin in his heart improved a lot. He really is a dragon among men, the king exclaimed. Changyang Ba just looked at his son with a smile on his face. He was very proud of himself. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire also saw Jianqin. They were shocked. They looked at each other and then stepped forward at the same time. They cupped their hands at Jianqin and said in unison, "Greetings, Lord Imperial Protector." When the 5 imperial advisors greeted Lord Imperial Protector, the king of the kingdom of Jessin and Changyang Ba's expressions froze. They stared blankly at the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire who were saluting Jianqin. They fell into a daze and couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. The group of elders and guards of Changyang Prefecture, as well as the experts of the Black Armored Army who followed the king of the kingdom of Jessin, all had the same expression. They stared blankly at the 5 imperial advisors who were saluting Jianqin. Their faces were full of disbelief. Imperial Protector? How can the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire be called Changyang Shoten, the Imperial Protector? Third Aunt Bai Shuang looked at the scene in front of her in shock. Her heart was in turmoil, and she couldn't calm down. Jianqin looked at Xiaotian and the others with a wry smile and said, "I didn't expect you to find me so quickly." Qing Shaifan looked around and chuckled. "Lord Imperial Protector, I hope we haven't caused you any trouble." Jianqin sighed softly. Just as he was about to speak, Changyang Ba's voice sounded, "Xiang'er, what is going on?" Changyang Ba's voice was trembling. It was difficult to conceal the excitement in his voice. Everyone had heard the words Imperial Protector, loud and clear. It was just that they found it hard to believe. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire actually called his son the Imperial Protector. If that was the case, then the Imperial Protector who sent the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire to help the kingdom of Jessin fend off the allied forces of the 4 empires was his 4th son, Changyang Shoten? At this time, the king and Chang Bo also regained their senses. They looked at Jianqin in shock, waiting for Jianqin's reply. Jianqin pondered for a moment, then said, "Father, let's talk in the grand hall." Changyang Ba suddenly came to his senses. He suppressed the urgency in his heart and hurriedly said, "Yes, yes, yes. Let's talk in the grand hall. Your Majesty, the 5 imperial advisors, please come in." Immediately, all the higher-ups of Changyang Prefecture, the king of the Qin Empire, and the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire gathered in the grand hall. Jianqin's mother and 3 aunts were not qualified to participate in such a high-level event. However, they also wanted to know the relationship between Jianqin and the Qin Empire, so they had no choice but to brace themselves and enter. There were not many seats in the grand hall. A group of old people from Changyang Prefecture took the initiative to give up their seats. All the old people stood quietly to one side, not saying a word. However, their eyes were still filled with shock as they looked at Jianqin. Their minds were still replaying the scene from before. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire had actually called the 4th young master of Changyang Prefecture the Imperial Protector. This scene was also very hard for them to believe, because the dozen or so old people had not taken their seats. The mounts were quite empty. Jianqin took his mother's hand and sat down on a chair. Then he sat down beside her. "Xiang'er, what's going on? Are you the Imperial Protector of the Qin Empire?" Changyang Ba asked impatiently as soon as he sat down, unable to hold back the anxiety in his heart. "That's right, father. I have another identity. I am the Imperial Protector of the Qin Empire," Jianqin said truthfully. Now that things had progressed to this point, there was no need to hide anything. Changyangba's body couldn't help but tremble. His expression immediately became very excited. Then he looked at the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire who were sitting together with him, as if seeking confirmation. The rest of the people in the grand hall were also stunned by Jianqin's words. Their eyes lost their focus, especially the dozen or so old people in Changbo. Their emotions fluctuated greatly. The mysterious imperial protector of the Qin Empire was actually one of their own people. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire all nodded with a smile, confirming this fact. Among the people present, the king was the most shocked, and the one who couldn't believe it the most. The identity of the imperial protector of the Qin Empire had always been very mysterious. During this period of time, the king had wondered more than once about the relationship between the Qin Empire and the kingdom of Joseon. He had also wondered how he could truly climb up to the great tree that was the Qin Empire. Because of these questions, he had racked his brains over the past few days, but in the end he still couldn't find a feasible way. But now he had never expected that things would turn out so dramatically. The imperial protector of the Qin Empire, who he had tried so hard to find and curry favor with, was actually his future son-in-law. This result made the king of the kingdom of Joseon not know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know whether to be happy or sad. "My dear nephew, you've kept us in the dark for so long," the king said with a wry smile. After learning that Jianqin was the imperial protector of the Qin Empire, he was so happy that he even changed the way he addressed Jianqin. Chang Wuji also let out a sigh. He looked at Jianqin with gratification and said, "Fourth young master, I didn't expect you to have such an identity. Our Changyang prefecture has benefited a lot from you." Chapter 454. Then they chatted and laughed with each other in the hall. Since the 5 imperial preceptors of the Qin Empire knew the exact identity of the imperial protector, they treated the people of Changyang Prefecture very politely. They had long since put aside the noble identity of the Qin Empire's imperial preceptor. The 5 imperial preceptors' attitude greatly satisfied the vanity and honor of Changyangba and the dozen or so elders. It made all the higher-ups of Changyang Prefecture feel proud. Because of the relationship with Jianqin, the status of Changyang Prefecture was like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate, leaping thousands of feet high and turning into a giant dragon. Among the people sitting there, only the king of the kingdom of Joseon had the lowest status. However, the king did not care about this at all. Instead, he was very excited. He swore that he had never been so excited in his life. After the people chatted for a while in the conference hall of Changyang Prefecture, the banquet was ready. Then, Changyangba stood up and warmly invited the distinguished guests to the banquet. "Xiang'er, come with me." Changyangba affectionately took Jianqin's hand and walked outside. Jianqin could clearly feel that his father's hand was trembling slightly. The banquet was arranged in a spacious hall. The best maids in Changyang Prefecture were all gathered here. However, there was only one table for the banquet, and only 10 chairs were placed. The 5 imperial preceptors of the Qin Empire, the king of the kingdom of Joseon, the family head of Changyang Prefecture and Changbo, as well as Jianqin and his mother, Bai Yuntian, took their seats at the same time. This arrangement was agreed upon by all the higher-ups of Changyang Prefecture. Although Changyangba and Bai Yuntian's seniority was not the highest in Changyang Prefecture, it was because they had such an outstanding son that the elders who held all kinds of power in Changyang Prefecture made such an arrangement. It imperceptibly raised their status. As for Changbo, although he was only a housekeeper on the surface, his status in Changyang Prefecture was very special. He deserved to participate in such a high-level banquet. Alas, Xiang'er also benefited from a disaster. When he was 15 years old, he was forced to leave home because of some things. He left for 6 years. None of us expected that Xiang'er would grow to such a height after 6 years. It's really unbelievable. At the table, Changyangba said with a sigh, "Yes, nephew's talent is really high. It's really unprecedented." His Majesty the King sighed. Hearing the two's words, The 5 imperial preceptors of the Qin Empire looked at each other. Their eyes were full of shock. Although Jianqin was very young, they thought that Jianqin's age must be older than what he appeared to be. After all, it was impossible to judge a person's age by appearance alone. Now that they heard Chang Yongba's words, the 5 suddenly understood that Jianqin's age was much younger than they thought. He was only 21 years old. A 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master. Thinking of this, Xiaotian and the others were shocked. They had previously guessed Jianqin's age. Although Jianqin was less than 50 years old, they thought that he was at least 30 years old. But now, after knowing Jianqin's exact age, the 5 of them were shocked speechless. A 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master was really unprecedented. The most outstanding genius in the Tianyuan continent only reached the realm of Heaven Saint Master at 30 years old. But this genius's final achievement was the supreme Holy Emperor. After this matter, the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Huang Kingdom secretly made up their minds to use this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to curry favor with the imperial protector and nurture their relationship to the deepest level. This was because they knew that the youngest imperial protector in the history of the Qin Huang Kingdom would most likely become a supreme existence, like the sacred king in the future. After the banquet ended, the 5 people did not leave. They gathered again in the discussion hall of Changyang Prefecture and continued to chat. It was evening before they all left. In private, the king of the kingdom of Jessen found Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. He said, "In-laws, the war has just ended. This king still has many matters to attend to, so I will have to leave early tomorrow morning. This king hopes that you can enter the imperial palace and discuss the marriage between my daughter and Xiangtian. These 2 children are not young anymore, so it is time for this marriage." "Haha, of course. Don't worry, your majesty. Once the estate has settled down, we will immediately bring Xiang'er to the imperial palace. I hope we won't cause any trouble for your majesty." Chang Yangba chuckled. Although his son's status was different from before, he still approved of this marriage. On one hand, it was to make the king feel at ease. On the other hand, it was also to acknowledge the Princess of Glan. This was because Chang Yangba had seen the Princess of Glan before. He could not help but sigh in admiration. The Princess of Glan was truly an outstanding girl. Ha, what are you talking about? I'm more than happy. How can it be troublesome?" The king was very happy and laughed loudly. He used this to vent the joy in his heart. His heart that was in his throat finally calmed down. After the king left, Chang Yangba and Bai Yuntian went to Jianqin's room. They found that the 5 imperial preceptors of the Qin Empire were also in Jianqin's room. Chang Yangba and his wife exchanged greetings with the 5 imperial preceptors of the Qin Empire. Then they looked at Jianqin and said with a smile, "Xiang'er, get ready tonight. We will go to the imperial palace tomorrow morning." "Yes, father," Jianqin replied. This was within his expectations. Now that his identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire had been exposed, it would be abnormal if the king of the kingdom of Jessen still did not take action to rope in the Changyang Prefecture. Jianqin also wanted to use this relationship to help the kingdom of Jessen climb up the big tree of the Qin Empire. No matter what, the kingdom of Jessen was his motherland. This country was also the result of the blood and sweat of the ancestors of Changyang Prefecture. As a descendant of Changyang Prefecture, he should do his part. Chang Yangba and Bai Yuntian wanted to say a few more words with Jianqin, but they finally left after looking at the 5 imperial preceptors. After Chang Yangba and Bai Yuntian left, Jianqin stood in the room and pondered for a while. Then he walked to the bedside and sat down. He said, "I will go to the imperial palace tomorrow morning. The 5 of you can stay in Changyang Prefecture for a few days." "Yes, imperial protector," Xiaotian and the other 4 answered in unison. Unconsciously, their attitude towards Jianqin became more respectful. Not to mention Jianqin's terrifying potential, his current strength was not weaker than theirs at all. He was even stronger than them. As soon as the 5 imperial preceptors of the Qin Empire left, a maid who was waiting outside came in. "Fourth young master, madam and master ask you to go to the conference hall." "Got it. You can leave now," Jianqin said lightly. "Yes, sir." The maid left. Jianqin arrived before the bed and looked at the white tiger that was sleeping soundly beside the pillow before leaving. He walked towards the conference hall. It was already dark outside, but Changyang Prefecture was still brightly lit. Pairs of black-armored soldiers with cold gazes walked through Changyang Prefecture. Aside from the original guards of Changyang Prefecture, there was now a new group of black-armored soldiers that specialized in protecting the imperial family. Jianchen walked into the conference hall. The conference hall was no longer as lively as it was during the day. There were only 3 people inside. 2 of them were Jianchen's parents, and the third was a middle-aged man in black armor. Jianchen recognized this middle-aged man. He was his uncle Bai Dao. Bai Yuntian and Changyang Ba sat across from Bai Dao. "Xiang'er, come and greet your uncle," Bai Yuntian said to Jianchen. Bai Dao also turned his head to look at his nephew. He felt gratified as he smiled faintly. Jianchen strode forward and said, "Uncle." Bai Dao stood up from his chair and laughed aloud. "Good, good, good. You truly are a descendant of my Bai family." With that, Bai Dao strode toward Jianchen. Suddenly, he threw a punch at Jianchen's chest with lightning-like speed. Surging, wind-attributed Saint force radiated from his fist, causing a violent gust of wind to sweep through the entire hall. He had clearly used his full strength. Bai Dao's attack was so sudden that it came without any warning. Coupled with his strength as an Earth Saint Master, Changyang Ba was unable to react in time. Jianchen smiled. With a thought, the qi of the world condensed in his hand. He then gently struck out with his palm, blocking Bai Dao's punch. The 2 collided, producing a heavy sound in the air. Since both of them controlled their energy very well, no shock waves spread out. Thump, thump, thump. Bai Dao staggered back a few steps before stabilizing himself with great difficulty. His smile became even wider as he laughed aloud, controlling the energy of the world. "Xiangtian, you really have become a Heaven Saint Master. No wonder you're the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. Brother, you should believe me now, right?" Bai Yuntian said rather complacently. As a mother, she felt extremely proud of her son's accomplishments. I do. Of course I do. Ha ha ha." Bai Dao chuckled. He was clearly extremely happy. A thin layer of mist quickly appeared in his eyes, but it dispersed very quickly, so no one noticed. Changyang Ba stood up from his chair and smiled. "Bai Dao, it's been 6 years since the 2 of you have seen each other. You 2 chat first. I'll go deal with the matters of the clan. Xiang'er, you stay here with your mother and uncle." With that, Changyang Ba left the discussion hall. Bai Dao calmed down very quickly. He looked at his nephew with mixed feelings and sighed. A 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master. I never thought that such an outstanding descendant would appear after my Bai family was destroyed. Bai Dao sighed before gradually becoming stern. He stared at Jianchen and sternly said, "Xiangtian, Uncle knows that your status is different now, but Uncle still wants you to remember one thing. Not only do you have the bloodline of the Changyang Prefecture, you also have the bloodline of my Bai family. The blood feud of my Bai family will all depend on you in the future." Bai Yuntian frowned and looked at Bai Dao with some reproach. She said with great dissatisfaction, "Brother, Xiang'er is still young, so why are you bringing up the past? Xiang'er has already suffered enough outside. He's finally come to an end after so much difficulty, so don't add more burdens to Xiang'er's shoulders." Chapter 455. Xiang'er, you don't have to worry about the Bai family right now. Let's talk about it in the future, okay? Bai Yuntian was rather uneasy. Even though her son was the imperial protector of the Qin Empire, the enemies of the Bai family were not weak, and their identities were still unknown. Even the ancestor of the Bai family, who was a saint ruler, could not deal with them. So how could her son deal with them? At the very least, he could not right now. Xiangtian, your mother is right. We just need to remember the enmity of the Bai family. As for revenge, let's talk about it in the future, because we don't even know the identity of our enemies. Perhaps our ancestors will know a little, Bai Dao said in a low voice. A sliver of sadness appeared on his face when he talked about the past. Bai Dao paused before continuing. Although the 4 heaven saint masters of our Bai family have all passed away, we still have a saint ruler ancestor whose fate is unknown. Perhaps he's still alive. Our priority right now is to find him. But we don't know where he is right now and whether he's still alive. Bai Yuntian was rather worried. Saint rulers don't die so easily. With Xiangtian's talent, I'm sure he'll reach that level sooner or later. It'll be much easier to find him then. Bai Dao looked at Jianqin and said, Xiangtian, I hope you can pay attention to any news of our ancestor in the future. Yeah, I will. Jianqin nodded. Jianqin and his mother chatted with Bai Dao for a while longer. In the end, they saw that it was getting late, so the 3 of them dispersed and returned to their rooms to rest. The night passed in a hurry. The next morning, Jianqin emerged from his room with the white tiger in his arms. After eating a sumptuous breakfast with everyone, he left Changyang Prefecture with Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. They hurried to the imperial palace with the black-armored army of the kingdom of Jessin. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire remained in Changyang Prefecture and were warmly received by everyone in the prefecture. Jianqin had actually left the 5 of them behind for some selfish reasons. He wanted to increase the deterrence of Changyang Prefecture. After several hours of travel, they finally arrived at the imperial palace in the evening. The king brought Jianqin Bai Yuntian and Bai Yuntian to an elegant hall to rest. He called for a few palace maids to serve them before leaving in a hurry. Not long after the king had returned to the imperial palace, a young man in his 20s and an old man sat across from each other in a luxurious room specially used for receiving important guests. They spoke softly. At this moment, a middle-aged man quickly walked in from outside. He knelt down on one knee before the 2 of them and said, Second Prince, Prime Minister Che, the king of the kingdom of Jessin, has returned to the imperial palace. However, there are 3 more people in the group. They seem to be of a special status. Hearing this, Prime Minister Che frowned slightly and said, Did anyone find out who they are? Prime Minister, I've already found out. The 3 of them are from a clan called Changyang Prefecture. They seem to have an important status in the kingdom of Jessin, said the middle-aged man. A gleam of light flashed through Prime Minister Che's eyes, and he said, You can leave. Pay close attention to their every move. Yes, Prime Minister. The middle-aged man quickly left. Che Qinxiang thought for a while and muttered, Changyang Prefecture. They're actually from Changyang Prefecture. A few years ago, the king of the kingdom of Jessin seemed to have betrothed Princess Glan to someone called Changyang Shoten. This Changyang Shoten is the 4th young master of Changyang Prefecture. Yesterday, the king rejected the marriage proposal from our heavenly eagle kingdom. Today, he invited people from Changyang Prefecture to the imperial palace. Haha, the meaning behind this is self-evident. A sharp gleam flashed through the second prince's eyes. He slowly took a sip of tea and said calmly, The king of the kingdom of Jessin really doesn't know what's good for him. Our heavenly eagle kingdom took the initiative to form a marriage alliance with them. Not only did he not cherish this opportunity, he even made us look bad. Humph. The second prince was very angry. Prime Minister Che chuckled. Second prince, please calm down. The marriage alliance was a task given to me by the king. I will do my best to complete it. As for the relationship between the kingdom of Jessin and the Qin Empire, it's not as close as we think. There's nothing to worry about. Hearing this, the second prince smiled faintly and said, Then I'll have to trouble you, Prime Minister. The Prime Minister stroked the long beard on his chin. His eyes flashed as he looked at the second prince and smiled. Could it be that the second prince has feelings for the Princess of Glan? The second prince nodded slightly and said, It's rare to meet someone who is famous. This Princess of Glan is indeed very outstanding in all aspects. Not only is her cultivation talent not inferior to mine, but she is also very beautiful. Moreover, I feel a feeling from her that I have never felt from other girls. She's so beautiful that she's out of this world, gentle and elegant, like a fairy in the mortal world. Prime Minister Che laughed foolishly. As an old man, he could tell at a glance that the second prince had feelings for the Princess of Glan. At the same time, in a room with pink silk hanging everywhere in the palace, a woman with long black hair was sitting in front of a dressing table. Her arms were moving like a machine as she slowly combed her hair. Her white and tender fingers were holding a wooden comb. Her movements were graceful and had a natural charm. She wore a black and white dress. Her heavenly beauty had a hint of innocence. Although the light in her eyes was dim, it couldn't hide the seductive light in her eyes. It was as if she had the ability to steal people's souls. May I come in? A middle-aged man's voice came from outside the door. It was very gentle. Father, come in. The woman sitting at the dressing table said calmly. The door opened, and the king of the kingdom of Jesson strode in. When he saw his daughter combing her hair, he sighed inside and said, I can understand your feelings, but as the ruler of a kingdom, there are many things that are beyond my control. Father, I understand. From the day I was born into the imperial clan, my fate was no longer in my control, the woman said emotionlessly. She was extremely dejected. There's no need to be so sad. You're my most beloved daughter. So how can I let you suffer? Is so outstanding. There's only one person who's worthy of you in my heart. Hurry up and dress up. We still have to go see the Changyang clan and your future husband, Changyang Shoten. Changyang Shoten? Isn't that the prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? The woman asked softly. She was rather doubtful. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The king murmured. Disdain appeared in his eyes as he said, How can the prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom be worthy of you? There are some things that you might not know. Now that things have come to this, it's time to tell you. The king paused for a moment and slowly walked behind you. He looked at his daughter's beauty through the reflection of the bronze mirror and smiled. You once stayed in Kargath Academy for a period of time. I believe you've seen Changyang Shoten before. After a few years, Changyang Shoten's accomplishments have reached a height that even I can only look up to. Did you know that Changyang Shoten is only 21 years old, but he's already a Heaven Saint Master? He's even defeated 3 Heaven Saint Masters from the Huayan sect by himself. Er's eyes immediately recovered. Her face was filled with disbelief. Her mind was filled with the words a 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master. The king continued, That's not all. Do you know why the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire suddenly came to our kingdom of Jesson's aid? Blankly shook her head. This is all thanks to Changyang Shoten. At the same time, Changyang Shoten is also the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. The 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire came to our kingdom of Jesson's aid because of Changyang Shoten. At this point, the Jesson Kingdom's king couldn't hide the excitement in his voice. This was truly too inspiring. This piece of news was even more shocking than the previous one. Er's eyes immediately widened when she heard this. Her cherry-like mouth opened slightly, forming an O shape. Her face was filled with disbelief. After a long while, finally returned to her senses. She turned her head and looked at the king in shock. She covered her mouth and cried out, How? How is this possible? Father, you're not lying to me, are you? The king chuckled and said, Do you think father would joke about something like this? All right, you should dress up and come with me to see Changyang Shoten. Our kingdom of Jessen needs to curry favor with the current Changyang prefecture. The future of our kingdom of Jessen depends on them. Ha ha ha! I never thought that Sir Imperial Protector would actually be the fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture. This is truly shocking. My name is Yi Ming. Sir Imperial Protector, you can just call me by my name. In the hall, an old man in white robes laughed loudly. His face was filled with unconcealable excitement and joy. This old man was a heaven saint master who guarded the imperial palace of the kingdom of Jessen. He had met Jianqin before at the eastern fort. Jianqin nodded with a smile and did not say anything else. Sir Imperial Protector, I heard that you were once a student of Kargath Academy. The principal of Kargath Academy, Kaffir, has already received the news and should be on his way. I believe he will arrive at the Imperial Palace soon. When he discovers that Sir Imperial Protector was actually once a student of his, I really wonder what kind of expression he will have. Ha! Yi Ming chuckled. Ha ha! The Imperial ancestor will probably be so shocked that he won't be able to say anything. As soon as Yi Ming finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. The king was walking in with large strides. You, who had already changed into a beautiful white dress, was silently following behind him. A strange light flashed through her beautiful eyes as she curiously studied the three people from Changyang Prefecture. Her gaze soon froze on Jianqin's face. Nephew, this is my daughter, Princess Glan. Her name is Yu Yu. This name was given to her by Yu's mother. As soon as they entered the hall, the king impatiently introduced his daughter. However, when he mentioned Yu Yu's mother, a trace of sadness appeared on his face. Chapter 456. Jianqin stood up from his chair and looked at Yu Yu with a calm gaze. He smiled and said, Greetings, Princess Glan. The Princess of Glan was wearing a white robe as she stood obediently behind the king. Her waist-long hair had been styled into a beautiful and exquisite hairstyle, adding a touch of enchanting color to her already heavenly beauty. She was able to steal one's soul. Princess Glan did not say anything, nor did she return the greeting. She stared at Jianqin with a strange look in her beautiful eyes. Her bright and innocent eyes blinked and flickered with a wise radiance. The king chuckled and said, My dear nephew, this is your first time in the palace of the kingdom of Jessen, right? Let Yu show you around. As he spoke, the king did not wait for Jianqin's reply and used his eyes to signal Princess Glan, who was standing behind him. Princess Glan understood and said gently, Princess Changyang Shoten, please come with me. Princess Glan's voice was very gentle and it was very comforting. Then I'll have to trouble you, Princess Glan. Jianqin smiled and returned the greeting. He then walked out. He also had some things to discuss with Princess Glan. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian smiled when they saw Princess Glan walk out of the hall. They were very satisfied with Princess Glan. In the kingdom of Jessen, other than Princess Glan, they could not find another girl who was worthy of their son. The king had an excited smile on his face as he sat down next to Yi Ming. He happened to be facing Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. In-law, my dear nephew Xiangtian, and you are not young anymore. I think we should find some time to arrange this marriage. The king chuckled as he said, he was now hoping that this marriage could be arranged as soon as possible. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian looked at each other and pondered for a moment. Bai Yuntian then said, Your Majesty, we also agree with the marriage between Xiang and Princess Glan. However, Xiang has grown up and has become someone who can take charge. There are some things that we can't interfere with directly. I think we should discuss this with Xiang and see what he thinks. Hearing this, the king's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. However, he still agreed with Bai Yuntian's suggestion. In the palace where the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's special envoy was resting, a guard quickly ran in and reporting to the second prince, Prime Minister, the king of the Kingdom of Jessen has brought Princess Glan over. Then, Princess Glan walked out with a young man who looked to be in his 20s. They are walking towards the Imperial Garden. You may leave. The Prime Minister waved his hand and ordered the guard to leave. His brows were tightly furrowed. A fierce look flashed across the second prince's eyes. His face was a little gloomy. That young man is undoubtedly Changyang Shoten. The king of the kingdom of Jessen is really refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I personally came here, but he treated me like this. How preposterous! The Prime Minister also coldly snorted and said, It seems that the king of the kingdom of Jessen is determined to betroth Princess Glan to Changyang Prefecture. Humph! This Prime Minister will go find the king and ask him face to face. After saying this, the Prime Minister swung his hand and left. There was a trace of anger on his face. After the Prime Minister left, the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom pondered for a moment. Then he coldly snorted and said in a low voice, Changyang Shoten, this prince wants to see what kind of ability you have. The person this prince has taken a fancy to is not someone you can taint. After saying this, the second prince quickly walked out of the palace and led a few experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to the Imperial Garden. Jian Qin followed the Glan princess around the Imperial Palace and soon arrived in a world of flowers. This was a sea of flowers with over 100 types of exotic flowers. The brightly colored flowers formed a perfect picture in the sea of flowers. The dense fragrance of the several dozen types of flowers permeated the air, dyeing the air in this space with a refreshing fragrance. Just a casual breath would make one feel refreshed. Along the way, the two of them didn't speak. The Princess Glan clearly liked this place. She leisurely walked around the flower bed surrounded by all kinds of flowers. There was a faint smile on her face as she looked at these brightly colored flowers. This is the largest garden in the kingdom of Jessen's palace. I like this place very much. As long as I am in the palace, I will come here every day to look at these beautiful flowers. This is because many of them were personally planted by me. The Princess Glan said with a smile. Her voice was clear and melodious, as moving as a lark. She was wearing a snow-white dress. Coupled with her heavenly beauty, she stood in the sea of flowers like a flower fairy. She was so beautiful. Jian Qin stared at the Princess Glan's beautiful face for a while and said, Princess Glan, have we met somewhere before? This sentence had been in Jian Qin's heart for a long time. Hearing this, the Princess Glan moved her gaze away from the flowers and turned to look at Jian Qin. She smiled faintly and said, My name is Yu, Changyang Shoten. I don't know if you still remember. A figure suddenly appeared in Jian Qin's mind. He suddenly realized, So it's you. We seem to have met a few years ago in Kargath Academy. No wonder I found the Princess Glan familiar. The Princess Glan could not help but recall the scene from a few years ago. At that time, she had met Changyang Shoten for the first time in Kargath Academy's library. Changyang Shoten's desire and obsession with books had left a deep impression on her. But now, only a few years had passed, and the puny saint from back then had become a peak expert of the Tian Yuan continent. Moreover, the Jessen kingdom, which had been in danger of being destroyed, had been saved by him alone. This made the Glan princess sigh in amazement, but she also found it hard to believe. Looking at the handsome Changyang Shoten before her, the Princess Glan hesitated slightly before saying, Changyang Shoten, I heard from my father that you are already a Heaven Saint Master. I wonder if you can let me experience the feeling of flying. Hearing this, Jian Qin hesitated for a while before nodding in the end. He smiled. Princess, please get ready. With that, Jian Qin gently grabbed the Princess Glan's arm with his right hand. Although there was a layer of clothes between them, Jian Qin could clearly feel the soft and supple skin of the Princess Glan's arm. The Princess Glan's arm was very slender and soft. Jian Qin's small hand could wrap around it. The moment her arm was grabbed by Jian Qin, A trace of panic appeared on the Princess Glan's face. Ever since she was young, other than her father, no other man had ever touched her body. However, before she could think about it, a dense layer of wind elemental energy enveloped her body. Afterward, she felt her feet leave the ground as she slowly rose into the air. Jianqin was calm. His eyes were as clear as water. He carefully rose into the air with the Grand Princess, slowly ascending into the sky. The Princess Glan calmed down very quickly. Her attention was completely attracted by the novelty of flying. Her face was filled with curiosity and joy as she looked at the shrinking palace below her. Her face was filled with excitement. Is this what it means to fly in the air? Flying freely in the sky like a bird. How enviable! The Princess Glan's face was filled with unconcealable envy. Princess Glan's talent is extraordinary. As long as you cultivate diligently, you will definitely become a Heaven Saint Master in the future. Jianqin smiled. The Princess Glan did indeed have this talent. She already possessed the strength of a Saint Master. The two of them quickly landed on the ground and sat down in a pavilion in the garden. However, the way the Princess Glan looked at Jianqin had changed quite a bit. Looking at the beautiful Princess Glan, Jianqin hesitated for a moment before saying, "Princess Changyang Shoten, you should just call me Yor. That's what my father and Uncle Yiming call me." As soon as Jianqin opened his mouth, he was interrupted by the Princess Glan. After saying that, the Princess Glan's face turned slightly red. "All right then." Jianqin did not act pretentiously and said, You Princess, there is something that I think I should discuss with you." The Princess Glan did not say anything. Her bright eyes blinked as she looked at Jianqin. Jianqin continued, You Princess, the marriage between the two of us was decided by our parents without our consent. Actually, I am very opposed to this kind of marriage. In the past, it was because I was not strong enough and did not have the ability to change anything, so I could only silently accept it. However, it's different now. I have enough power now. Jianqin stopped there. Although he did not explain, the extremely intelligent Yu understood what Jianqin meant. The Princess Glan fell silent as she stared blankly at the chess record on the stone table. After a while, she said, Changyang Shoten, do you want to cancel the marriage between us? You Princess, I believe that you are also very opposed to this kind of marriage. If you agree, I can immediately ask His Majesty to cancel this marriage. I know why your father is doing this, but you can rest assured that as a citizen of the Kingdom of Jesson, this is already my home. I will do my best to protect the Kingdom of Jesson. Jianqin said calmly. Back then, he was very opposed to this marriage. However, he did not have enough power back then and could not change anything. However, everything was different now. Chapter 457. Back in Kargath Academy, when she heard that her father had already arranged a marriage for her. The Glan Princess was extremely opposed to the marriage that was arranged without her consent. She had even taken the initiative to ask her father to cancel the marriage several times, but she had returned empty-handed every time. However, after all these years of growth, Princess Glan had gradually come to understand that the Jesson Kingdom was still a developing kingdom. Although she was the princess of a kingdom and had a delicate status, there were many things that were beyond her control. Take marriage as an example. When it came to matters that concerned her lifelong happiness, it was difficult for her to have a choice. In this life, she was destined to be a sacrifice for the kingdom's peace and prosperity. This caused her heart to gradually mature, and she slowly accepted such things. The Glan Princess was extremely opposed to the marriage that the king had arranged for her. However, ever since she heard about Jianqin's achievements and saw Jianqin, the Glan Princess' heart gradually changed. She gradually accepted Jianqin. After all, Jianqin was so handsome and talented. He was already a Heaven Saint Master at the age of 21. His future was limitless. He also had another identity as the imperial tutor of the Qin Empire. He was neither arrogant nor hot-tempered, and he was amiable and respectful. Being enveloped by so many halos of glory, Genshin's image in the Glan princess' heart became extremely great. He could be said to be the killer of all the girls in the world, the Prince Charming in their hearts. Previously, the Glan princess was secretly delighted about the marriage because Genshin was so outstanding. It would be difficult to find a second person like Genshin in the entire world. Moreover, his special identity and great strength were extremely important to the Glan kingdom. She felt a little excited that her future husband was such an outstanding person. However, at this moment, Genshin actually took the initiative to cancel the engagement. This made the Princess of Glan feel very disappointed. Although the Princess of Glan did not develop feelings for Genshin in this short period of time, Genshin's excellence had already moved her heart. For a moment, both of them were silent. Neither of them spoke. After a long while, the Princess of Glan finally broke the strange silence and said, "Changyang Shoten, can you tell me why you want to dissolve this marriage? Could it be that you already have someone in your heart?" Genshin shook his head and said, "Princess Glan, I'm sure you know what happened to me back then. I left Changyang Prefecture alone and wandered around for a few years. Although I was lucky enough to survive in the end, I provoked many enemies outside. Some of them were very powerful, and even I can't fight against them now. Moreover, perhaps in the near future, something even more serious will happen. Even I can't predict the outcome of this matter. Right now, I only want to focus on increasing my strength so that I can deal with the possible calamity in the future. I don't want to waste time on relationships." After hearing Genshin's words, the Princess of Glan gently sighed in relief. She looked at Genshin's resolute and handsome face with a smile and said gently, "Changyang Shoten, it's no wonder you were able to reach your current realm in just a few years. It seems that you've been working very hard on your cultivation. You must have suffered a lot over the years." When Genshin heard about the suffering outside, he sighed in his heart. He had indeed worked very hard in the past few years and had paid a lot. Not only had he been on the brink of death time and time again, there was even one time where he had truly died. It was not a coincidence that he was able to achieve what he had today. "Princess, I hope you can understand. Right now, I don't want to talk about relationships. I need to increase my strength as quickly as possible to deal with the future." Genshin spoke again, but in his heart he thought of the Sher family and the Jetta family. These two families had Saint Kings in their ranks, which was what Genshin was most afraid of. There was also the Qiangan kingdom, Yangjizong, and the guardian family mentioned by the old headmaster who escaped. This made Genshin a little worried. Could it be another powerful force that was difficult to deal with? However, from the old headmaster's words, Genshin was able to deduce that the guardian family strength was probably beyond his imagination. Lastly, there was the matter of the white tiger. Genshin had always kept Uncle Xiu's warning in mind. He needed to increase the white tiger's strength as quickly as possible. Perhaps the white tiger's matter would also cause a storm. The Gilligan family and the white tiger had already become enemies. With the white tiger status as a winged tiger, the Gilligan family would definitely not allow it to grow. This was because it would be a disaster for the Gilligan family. Now, Genshin was worried that the king of the Gilligan family would ignore the agreement with the humans and leave the Cross Mountains to personally hunt down the white tiger. This was a terrifying existence that could easily kill a Saint King. Genshin did not dare to imagine if he would be able to escape from the Gilligan family. After a moment of hesitation, the princess said, "Changyang Shoten, my father personally decided on this marriage back then. Now that you want my father to cancel it, have you considered the dignity of the imperial family?" Seeing how Genshin remained silent, the princess hesitated for a while before finally coming up with an idea. After a moment of hesitation, she still said, "How about this? The two of us can go to father and tell him to postpone the marriage indefinitely. If that's the case, you." Genshin became rather troubled. If he did that, he would be wasting the princess youth. Right now, he only wanted to increase his strength so that he could deal with the future. He had not considered his marriage at all. Princess Glan sighed softly. She felt a little helpless when she made such a decision. If it were before, she definitely would have agreed without any hesitation if Gentian proposed to cancel the marriage, but now, Princess Glan, I never thought I'd see you here. What a coincidence. Suddenly, laughter rang out from nearby. A young man walked over with a smile on his face. He seemed to be around the same age as Gentian and was also extremely handsome. However, he seemed rather scholarly, which was very different from Gentian's resolute face. 2 guards followed behind the young man. They seemed to be in their 50s, and their faces were composed while their gazes were sharp. He's the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the princess whispered to Gentian. Gentian nodded slightly. His gaze only casually glanced at the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom before he lost interest. He began to admire the colorful sea of flowers around him. The second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was wearing a luxurious robe and holding a folding fan in his hand. He walked over elegantly from afar and sat down on the stone bench without waiting for the host's greeting. He did not even look at Gentian. With a bright smile on his face, he said to the princess, I never thought that I would meet the princess of the Glan Kingdom just by strolling around. It seems that this prince and the princess of the Glan Kingdom are really fated. After the princess of the Glan Kingdom and the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom exchanged some pleasantries, the second prince finally noticed Gentian. He smiled and said, If I'm not wrong, this must be the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. Although the second prince had a smile on his face, his expression was arrogant and his tone was filled with unconcealable arrogance. He looked at Gentian with a hint of disdain. That's right, it's me. Gentian said expressionlessly. The second prince smiled and turned to look at the princess of the Glan Kingdom. He said, Princess, I would like to speak with young master Changyang Shoten alone. The princess of the Glan Kingdom hesitated for a moment before standing up from the stone bench. She said, Then I won't disturb the 2 of you. With that, she walked out of the pavilion and walked through the sea of flowers alone. After the princess of the Glan Kingdom left, the smile on the second prince's face disappeared. He looked at Gentian with a threatening gaze and said in a deep voice, Changyang Shoten, this prince knows that you are already engaged to the princess of the Glan Kingdom. However, the princess of the Glan Kingdom is someone that this prince has taken a fancy to. Anyone who dares to have any ideas about the princess of the Glan Kingdom is going against this prince. Therefore, this prince hopes that you can ask His Majesty to cancel this engagement. Gentian looked at the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom with a mocking expression. He said, It's not up to you to interfere in my affairs. Furthermore, you don't have the right to interfere. Your Highness, if there's nothing else, please leave. The second prince's expression changed. He looked at Gentian with a cold gaze, and his tone became cold. He said, Changyang Shoten, do you know what you're saying? Do you really want to make an enemy of this prince? Do you want to bring disaster to Changyang Prefecture? It seems like you don't know the strength of my Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. A cold smile appeared on Gentian's lips. Since the second prince was so rude, he couldn't be bothered to give him any face. He said disdainfully, Your Highness, what right do you have to be my enemy? Changyang Prefecture isn't something that you can provoke. As for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, do you believe that I can make your kingdom disappear overnight with just a word? How dare you? The second prince was enraged. He slapped the stone table in front of him into 2 halves. He looked at Gentian with eyes full of killing intent. He shouted angrily, Changyang Shoten, who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Since you're seeking your own death, then this prince will fulfill your wish. Since you dare to insult my Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, no one can save you now. Men, take him down and bring him back to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to be dealt with by my imperial father. The two guards standing behind the second prince stepped forward with gloomy expressions. Their sharp gazes were filled with killing intent. Jinshin's words had caused their hearts to be filled with killing intent. The two of them each stretched out a hand to grab Jinshin's shoulder. They didn't put Jinshin in their eyes at all. Chapter 458. The two guards had never expected Jinshin to counterattack. Furthermore, the sword chi was extremely fast, not giving them any time to dodge. In the end, their outstretched hands were struck by the sword chi, and their palms were immediately pierced by the sword chi, causing blood to flow. The two middle-aged men's expressions changed at the same time. The intense pain from their palms caused them to involuntarily groan. They looked at their palms in shock, their faces filled with disbelief. Neither of them had thought that the fourth young master of Chanyang Prefecture would have such ability. Although they were extremely surprised, the two middle-aged men did not show the slightest fear. After suffering this loss, the two of them did not dare to be as careless as before. Powerful saint force surged from their palms, instantly condensing into two weapons. Without any hesitation, they stabbed at Jinshin. The moment the two guards took out their saint weapons, the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom turned pale with fright and quickly retreated. He was extremely clear on the strength of the two guards, but he had never thought that the fourth young master of Chanyang Prefecture would actually be able to force them to take out their saint weapons. This caused him to feel extremely shocked. Jinshin sat on the stone bench as if he had entered a meditative state. His eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at the guards who were attacking him once again. His hand lightly tapped twice, and two more sword chi shot out from his fingertips, colliding with the two incoming saint weapons. The sword chi dissipated upon contact, but the two middle-aged men's bodies trembled. They only felt an extremely powerful force from the saint weapons in their hands, causing their entire right arm to go numb. The right hand that held the saint weapons also drooped slightly, and they could not help but take a few steps back. They had already retreated out of the pavilion. The second prince's gaze swept past the shocked guards. His expression was uncertain. He had expected to clash with Jinshin on this trip, but the result was the exact opposite of what he had expected. The two Earth Saint Master Guards he had brought were actually unable to do anything to him. The sound of fighting attracted the attention of Princess Glan, who was admiring the flowers not far away. She immediately ran over from afar and looked at the stone table that had been smashed to smithereens. She asked what happened. Why did they suddenly start fighting? Jinshin stood up from the stone bench and slowly walked to the edge of the pavilion with his hands behind his back. He coldly stared at the second prince and expressionlessly said, "Your Highness, you should understand the principle of a loose tongue leads to disaster. I hope you can watch your words. This world still does not belong to your Heavenly Eagle Kingdom." Hearing this, the second prince's face immediately became gloomy. He said in a deep voice, "A loose tongue leads to disaster. That makes a lot of sense. Chanyang Shodan, this prince will remember your words. The future is long, let's wait and see." After saying this, the second prince left with his two guards dejectedly. Looking at the second prince's departing figure, Jinshin faintly smiled. He really did not place the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom in his eyes. The Glan princess looked at Jinshin's tall figure with a complicated expression. She gently walked to Jinshin's side and gently said, "Chanyang Shodan, he is a prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom after all. Moreover, this is the imperial palace of our kingdom of Jessen. Don't make things too big, okay? Don't worry, I know my limits. Even if something really does happen, I will bear the consequences." Jinshin's tone was very calm. "That's not what I meant." The Glan princess wanted to explain, but Jinshin interrupted her. "Princess Yu, let's go back." The second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was undoubtedly one of the people who received the most attention in the imperial palace. Not long after Jinshin and the Glan princess left, The news of the second prince being humiliated in the garden had already spread to the ears of those with status in the imperial palace. His Majesty, who was chatting with Changyang and his wife in the main hall, as well as the two princes, all received the news. In a splendidly decorated palace, 3 young men in their 20s were drinking and chatting merrily at a table filled with all sorts of delicacies. At this moment, a guard ran in from outside and whispered something in the ears of the 2 young men. Following this, a trace of surprise flashed in the eyes of the 2 young men. They waved their hands to signal the guard to leave, and their expressions became somewhat serious. "Your Highnesses, may I ask what has happened?" The young man sitting opposite the 2 asked curiously. "The guard just sent news that the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten, has offended the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. This is not going to be easy. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom is not something that our Kingdom of Jessen can afford to offend." One of the princes said with some worry, "What, Changyang Shoten?" The young man who asked the question was slightly surprised, but soon a trace of joy appeared on his face. He asked, "Could it be that the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten, has returned?" "That's right. Changyang Shoten has also just returned. We also received the news not long ago." Looking at Brother Mingdong's appearance, "Could it be that you know Changyang Shoten?" one of the princes asked curiously. Mingdong nodded slightly, saying, "I didn't think that he would return so quickly and even come to the palace. Your Highnesses, I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." After speaking, Mingdong hurriedly left, leaving the 2 princes of the Kingdom of Jessen staring at each other, their faces full of shock and disbelief. "Changyang Shoten actually knows Brother Mingdong?" one of the princes muttered in a low voice, extremely surprised. The second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom angrily returned to the palace, where he was resting with his 2 guards. As soon as he entered the palace, he slammed his palm heavily on the table, immediately breaking the expensive wooden table in half. "Changyang Shoten, this prince will make you regret this. This prince will return today's humiliation to you 1,000 times over." The second prince's eyes were filled with murderous intent. As a prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, he had always been respected no matter where he went. He had never been humiliated like today. At this moment, Minister Che also returned. His complexion was not very good. Looking at the angry second prince, he could not help but feel curious, asking, "Second prince, what happened? Why are you so angry?" "The people of Changyang Prefecture are too arrogant." Then the second prince truthfully recounted what had happened in the garden. Minister Che's expression became rather serious after hearing this. He said, "To be able to easily defeat 2 Earth Saint Masters in his 20s, his talent is truly terrifying. No wonder the king of the Kingdom of Jessen insisted on a marriage alliance with Changyang Prefecture. It was all because of Changyang Shoten." The second prince turned his head and stared at Minister Che. He said, "Minister Che, did your discussion with the king also fail?" Minister Che nodded and said, "Yes, the king is determined to betroth Princess Grant to Changyang Shoten. Even if I brought up the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, I could not sway him at all. But the king is right. If I were him, I would have done the same. I never thought that Changyang Shoten would have such strength. With such talent, given a few more days, his future achievements will be limitless. Who knows? He might even bring the Kingdom of Jessen into a golden age." A strong killing intent flashed through the second prince's eyes. His voice gradually became cold. He said coldly, "This is a threat to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Once the Kingdom of Jessen becomes strong, it will definitely threaten the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Changyang Shoten cannot be left alive." Minister Che nodded and said, "That's right. Since Changyang Shoten has said such disgraceful words, we can use this as a pretext to make a fuss. Then I will bring some experts to take down Changyang Shoten." The second prince was about to take action. He could not wait any longer. Wait, Minister Che said, "Your Highness, I have two plans to resolve this matter." Minister Che whispered into the second prince's ear. Jianqin and Princess Glan had already returned to the palace. The king and Changyangba were still chatting and laughing. "My dear nephew, you've come at the right time. You are not young anymore. Let's choose an auspicious day to get you two married as soon as possible," the king said with a smile. It seemed that he was very eager to get his daughter married. Changyangba and Bai Yuntian were also smiling. They were on the king's side. Hearing this, Jianchen hesitated slightly and said, "Your Highness, I have many things to deal with during this period of time. It is not the time to talk about love. Let's postpone this marriage for now." The king frowned. He exchanged glances with Changyangba and his wife. He seemed to be in a difficult position. "Father, I also agree to postpone this marriage," Princess Glan suddenly said. Her face was very calm. It was impossible to tell if she was happy, angry, or sad. Seeing that Jianqin and Princess Glan both agreed to postpone the marriage, the king had no other choice. He sighed and said, "All right, since the two of you want to postpone the marriage, then let's postpone it for a while." The king's face was filled with unconcealable disappointment. The status of the fourth young master of Changyang Prefecture was no longer the same as before. The king could only follow his wishes. He did not dare to force him to do anything. "Xiang'er, why are you doing this?" Bai Yuntian looked at Jianqin with some blame. "Mother, I really have many things to do. I don't have the energy to talk about love." Jianqin's face was filled with bitterness. In the eyes of others, he was the imperial advisor of the Qin Empire and a powerful Heaven Saint Master. However, only he knew how much pressure he was facing. The matter of the marriage being postponed indefinitely made the king and Changyangba and his wife feel a little disappointed. As parents, they naturally hoped that their children could get married sooner. Moreover, the other party was so outstanding. The crowd quickly dispersed. Jianqin and his parents were arranged to rest in a luxurious palace in the imperial palace. These palaces were specially used to entertain important guests. Chapter 459. At this moment, a guard ran in from outside and said, "Fourth young master Changyang Shoten, there's a person called Ming Dong outside who wishes to see you." Jianqin was slightly stunned when he heard Ming Dong's name. Soon afterwards, a sliver of joy appeared on his face, and he quickly made his way out. When Jianqin emerged from the palace, he saw a young man in white robes standing there with a smile. It was Ming Dong, who he had not seen in half a year. Ming Dong arrived before Jianqin with an excited smile. He extended his hand and patted Jianqin's shoulder heavily. He smiled. "Hi, Jianqin, you really have returned. You've come back much sooner than I expected." Jianqin studied Ming Dong. Ming Dong seemed to have undergone an extremely obvious change compared to half a year ago. He was much more composed and did not seem as impetuous as before. "Let's go in and talk." Jianqin led Jianqin into the palace with a smile. The king had specially arranged for Jianqin to live in. There were 50 black-armored guards outside. Jianqin and Jianqin sat down on chairs. A female attendant immediately poured tea and snacks for the two of them before withdrawing under Jianqin's orders. "I was just about to go look for you when I had the time. I never thought you'd be hiding in the palace." Jianqin was clearly in a very good mood as well. He and Ming Dong were the closest of brothers, so he was naturally very happy to see each other again. When the war had just ended, I accepted the king's invitation. It was difficult for me to turn down such kindness, so I came to stay in the palace for a few days and experience this kind of life. This is the first time I've experienced something like this, so I obviously have to enjoy it for a few more days, Ming Dong chuckled. "Have you enjoyed enough?" Jianqin smiled. Ming Dong picked up a snack and placed it in his mouth, munching on it as he mumbled, I originally wanted to stay here for a few more days, but since you've returned, I'll naturally follow you in the future. Wherever you go, I, Mingdong, will go." Suddenly, Mingdong turned to Jianqin and said, "Right, Jianqin. Should I call you Changyang Shoten or Jianqin?" "Just call me Jianqin. I like that name better. I only use the name Changyang Shoten at home. Outside, I'm Jianqin," Jianqin said without any hesitation. Mingdong nodded, his expression suddenly becoming serious. "I've already completed the mission you gave me. I've already personally handed the heaven-seizing fortune art to your father. Furthermore, I know about your past. Count me in on the Huayan sex matter. When the time comes, don't forget to call me." Jianqin chuckled. "There's no need for that. I've already dealt with the Huayan sex matter." Mingdong was startled, asking in confusion, "Dealt with? How did he solve it? You won't let the Huayan sect off so easily, right?" Jianqin and Jianqin had been discussing things in the palace until late into the night. Jianqin had nothing to hide from Mingdong, so he told him everything that had happened after they had parted. However, he hid the matter of the white tiger. It wasn't that Jianqin didn't trust Mingdong, but rather that the fewer people who knew about the white tiger, the better. Moreover, telling Mingdong this matter would only increase the pressure on him. After hearing about everything that had happened to Jianqin, Mingdong couldn't help but sigh, especially when Jianqin said that he had fought against 8 Heaven Saint Masters. Mingdong's heart skipped a beat. "I never thought that so many things would happen. The Jitta family and the Shi family definitely won't forgive him. Once we have enough strength, we'll definitely make those 2 families pay a heavy price. However, Jianqin, you can be considered to have profited from a disaster. Although you've suffered a great calamity, your strength has increased by leaps and bounds. You've actually become a Heaven Saint Master and Imperial Protector of the Qin Empire. I find it hard to believe. If I haven't guessed wrong, you should only be 21 years old." Mingdong only left late into the night. He was a guest of the Kingdom of Jessen, so he had his own residence in the palace. After Mingdong left, Jianqin also entered his room and sat cross-legged on the bed in deep thought. At this time, the white tiger, who had been sleeping soundly on the bed, finally woke up after digesting the medicine. The white tiger stood up, feeling refreshed. It stretched lazily on the bed and stared at Jianqin with its bright little eyes. Then it leapt onto Jianqin's shoulder and rubbed its furry little head against Jianqin's face. It let out a few whimpers, showing that it was very attached to Jianqin. The white tiger could freely control the size of its body, so it was still only a foot long. It was like a little white cat, obedient and cute. Jianqin lifted the white tiger off his shoulder and sensed the energy within it. He could not help but smile. It had only been a few days, but the white tiger had already reached Class 3. This growth rate was truly terrifying. If this continued, the white tiger's strength would definitely reach Class 5 within a year as long as he provided it with enough heavenly resources. As expected of a winged tiger that only appeared once in ancient times. "Its growth rate is just too fast," Jianqin sighed inside. Jianqin took out a few thousand-year-old heavenly resources from his space ring again and said softly, "Work hard to increase your strength. Raise your strength to the highest possible level. Only then will you have the ability to protect yourself." Heavenly resources were irresistible to the white tiger. As soon as it saw the 1,000-year-old heavenly resources in Jianqin's hand, the white tiger's eyes immediately lit up. It wolfed them down and revealed an extremely happy expression. It let out a comfortable burp before lying in Jianqin's arms and closing its eyes, falling into a deep sleep to digest the medicinal effects. Looking at the sleeping white tiger, a trace of worry appeared on Jianqin's face. He muttered, "The closer it gets to the later stages, the greater the amount of energy needed. The speed of digesting energy will also increase exponentially. I wonder how long the heavenly resources in my hands can last. It seems like I have to think of something." Afterwards, Jianchen slowly closed his eyes and held 2 Class 5 monster cores in his hands as he cultivated. Without a king armament, Jianchen could only use the energy within the monster cores to slowly evolve into chaotic force. Jianchen knew that chaotic force was extremely powerful. Although he could not use it right now, once he had a good foundation, he would naturally be able to use chaotic force in the future. And this foundation was his physical body. Only when his physical body was strong enough could he support the circulation of chaotic force. Right now, he needed enough chaotic force to strengthen his physical body. Once he could use chaotic force, Jianchen believed that his strength would once again increase by leaps and bounds. In the latter half of the night, the entire imperial palace was quiet, so quiet that it was frightening. Squads of soldiers wearing black armor were moving around the imperial palace, silently protecting the imperial palace. Suddenly, a figure completely hidden in the night flashed past, silently approaching Jianchen's imperial palace. The surrounding darkness completely submerged his figure, as if he had completely merged into the darkness. Even if someone were to approach him, it would be difficult to detect his presence. The figure that had merged into the darkness easily avoided the black armored soldiers guarding outside the imperial palace, and silently entered the imperial palace. The interior of the imperial palace was pitch black, without the slightest bit of light. The surrounding darkness did not seem to affect the black figure at all. He could clearly see the surrounding scenery in the dark. After the black figure scanned the surroundings, he stealthily and noiselessly arrived at Jianchen's room. He saw Jianchen sitting cross-legged on the bed, cultivating. When the black figure was 10 meters away from Jianchen, a jade bottle appeared in his hand. He gently removed the lid, and a faint gas emitted from the bottle, slowly drifting towards Jianchen. The black figure waited for a few seconds. Seeing that it was about time, he put away the jade bottle, and a jet-black dagger silently appeared in his hand. He then turned into a black streak of light and shot towards Jianchen, stabbing the dagger towards Jianchen's throat. At this moment, a purplish-green light flashed in the dark room. A crisp sound of metal clashing could be heard, and the black shadow's charging figure came to an abrupt stop. Instead of moving forward, he staggered back a few steps. Every step he took on the ground made a dull sound of footsteps. How rare! I've actually encountered a darkness-attributed saint force. An indifferent voice rang out in the pitch-black room. Jianchen had already opened his eyes. The surrounding darkness did not seem to affect him at all. He calmly looked at the figure that seemed to have completely merged into the darkness. Why, you're actually fine. How is that possible? The figure hidden in the darkness was extremely shocked. Jianchen smiled faintly. Your poison is too weak. It's useless against me. The black figure knew that his assassination had failed. He had actually been discovered by Jianchen, even though he was stealthy. He was not Jianchen's opponent in a direct confrontation, so he no longer hesitated. He turned into a black streak of light and charged outside with lightning-like speed, completely silent. Darkness attributed Saint Force. People were known as the Kings of the Night. The night was their world. Not only could they perfectly hide their presence, they could also merge their bodies into the darkness, making it very difficult for others to detect them. You want to leave? Not so easy. Jianchen sneered. He grabbed at the air, and the dark space immediately lit up. In a single moment, a fiery red elemental sword condensed in his hand. The bright light illuminated the dark room, alarming even the black armored army guarding outside. Swish! With a shake of his hand, the fire elemental sword shot out. It nimbly made a few turns in the room before finally breaking through the door and shooting toward the fleeing black figure. Boom! A violent roar resounded as flames lit up the sky. The entire palace was alarmed. That black figure was engulfed by the waves of flames that were emitting intense heat. He let out a miserable cry as he could no longer hide. His body was exposed. The clothes on his body were instantly burned to ashes. Although he finally escaped the sea of flames, he was severely injured. Assassin! Assassin! The originally quiet palace instantly became lively. A large number of soldiers in black armor quickly ran over from afar with torches in their hands. Figures constantly flashed on the roofs. Some of the experts hidden in the palace also rushed over at full speed to the place where the light of the fire shone. Seeing that they had been exposed, the person who had come to assassinate Jianqin did not dare to stay any longer. Ignoring his injuries, he crawled to his feet and fled into the darkness. Chapter 460. How dare you try to assassinate a brother of mine in the imperial palace? You really don't want to live anymore. Ming Dong's face was gloomy as killing intent flickered in his sharp eyes. His fist surged with wind-attributed Saint force as he struck the assassin's forehead with lightning speed. Bang! With a muffled sound, blood splattered from the assassin's forehead. His forehead had been ruptured by Ming Dong's punch, causing his entire forehead to cave in. He did not even make a sound before fainting. Several Earth Saint Masters had already arrived in front of the assassin. The light from the burning torches dispersed the surrounding darkness, allowing them to clearly see the assassin's appearance. The assassin's clothes had already been burned to ash, leaving his upper body bare. Even his hair had been burned away, leaving his skin pitch black. Even his face had been disfigured, coupled with the terrifying wound on his forehead. It was impossible to make out his appearance. Very soon, the surrounding area was surrounded by over 100 black armored soldiers who had heard the news. Even more black armored soldiers were converging from all directions in the distance. What's going on? What's going on? At this moment, a deep voice rang out from behind. The king in his pajamas had arrived under the protection of several experts. His complexion was very ugly. Your Majesty, an assassin has snuck into the palace and attempted to assassinate the fourth young master of the Chanyang prefecture. He has already been captured. A black armored soldier immediately reported to the king in a low voice. Hearing that, the king's face sank. He yelled, "Capture the assassin and throw him into the prison for interrogation. We must find out his identity as soon as possible." "Yes, Your Majesty." Immediately, several black armored soldiers tied up the unconscious assassin and left under the personal protection of 2 Earth Saint Masters. At this moment, Jianqin walked out of the palace as well. He stood at the entrance with his hands behind his back as he watched the scene unfold before him. He was extremely calm. Ming Dong arrived beside Jianqin and asked, "Jianqin, are you all right?" Jianqin shook his head. "I'm fine. He can't hurt me." The king also arrived beside Jianqin and asked in concern, "Nephew, are you all right? The assassin didn't hurt you, right?" "Don't worry. I'll do my best to investigate this matter." Now, that Jianqin's status was different from before. The kingdom of Jessen had the backing of someone like him. The king was much more confident. Jianqin hesitated before nodding. "Then I'll trouble Your Majesty." The matter of the assassin's attack had caused a huge commotion in the royal palace. Not only had the king come, even the Heaven Saint Master Yi Ming had been alerted and hurried over personally. The appearance of an assassin in the royal palace was no small matter. Moreover, the assassin's identity was so special. However, under Jianqin's instructions, the matter calmed down very quickly. Not long after, the royal palace returned to its usual tranquility. However, the number of black armored soldiers patrolling at night had more than doubled. The number of black armored soldiers stationed outside Jianqin's palace had also increased from the original 50 to 200. Although the king knew that this was only for show, he had to at least make it look good on the surface. Jianqin returned to his palace and sat cross-legged on his bed. The light in his eyes flickered as cold killing intent flashed through them from time to time. The night passed quickly. On the morning of the second day, a commotion suddenly came from outside. Dozens of black armored soldiers stood in a row in front of the palace. Their faces were cold and expressionless. They radiated a killing intent that could only be possessed by a veteran of the battlefield. The leader of the black armored soldiers politely said, "Your Highness, Prime Minister, this is the palace of the fourth young master of Chanyang Prefecture. Without his permission, you cannot enter." On the other side, dozens of people in uniform were facing off against the black armored soldiers. They were the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Their leaders were the Prime Minister and the Second Prince. "Chanyang Shoten has insulted our Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and severely trampled on the dignity of our kingdom. Get out of the way immediately. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." The Second Prince's face was solemn as he spoke. He seemed to be ready to fight at any moment. Although this was the royal palace of the Kingdom of Jessen, the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom did not take them seriously. "Your Highness, no matter what, you cannot enter. Unless you have the permission of the fourth young master, we will not let you enter." A soldier of the black armored army said in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, "Humph, a mere soldier like you actually wants to block this prince's path. How preposterous!" The Second Prince was furious. He waved his hand and shouted, "Charge in. If there are any obstructions, don't hold back." Yes, the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom shouted in unison and took out their saint weapons at the same time. Although there were only 40 of them, they were all Earth Saint Masters. After all, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was much stronger than the Kingdom of Jessen at its peak. It was effortless for them to mobilize dozens of Earth Saint Masters. On the other hand, there were only 5 Earth Saint Masters in the black armored army. The rest were all great Saint Masters. The difference in strength was as great as the difference between heaven and earth. Even so, the black armored army did not back down and took out their saint weapons at the same time. "Stop!" Just as the battle was about to begin, a voice suddenly rang out. No one knew when, but Jianchen had appeared in front of the palace. He looked at the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom with a gloomy face. "Chanyang Shoten, I thought you were going to hide for a long time. You finally came out." The Second Prince's eyes burned with the flames of hatred. The humiliation he had suffered yesterday was unforgettable. Jianchen walked out of the palace step by step. He glared at the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and said in a deep voice, "State your intentions." "Chanyang Shoten, you insulted our Heavenly Eagle Kingdom yesterday and trampled on our dignity. If you know what's good for you, immediately surrender and follow us back to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to await Father's judgment. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences." The Second Prince said arrogantly. This time he had come prepared and brought a large number of experts. He did not fear Jianchen at all. Jianchen revealed a cold smile. His eyes were filled with disdain. He said in a mocking tone, "Second Prince, if you take your people and leave now, I can let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, I'll also give you a piece of advice. You will have to bear the consequences." The Second Prince's eyes shone with an ominous light. "You are courting death. Capture him." As soon as the Second Prince finished speaking, several Earth Saint Masters immediately charged toward Jianchen. "Stop them!" An expert from the black armored army yelled. 5 Earth Saint Masters from the black armored army moved at the same time to stop the experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Jianchen coldly snorted. He gently tapped with his finger, and several strands of sword chi shot out from the tip of his finger. They shot toward the Earth Saint Masters from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom as fast as lightning. The Earth Saint Masters from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were in the middle of fighting with the 5 experts from the black armored army. They did not have time to react, and were all pierced through by the sword chi. The experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom groaned at the same time and retreated in a sorry state. They stared at Jianchen, who was standing behind the black armored army, in shock. "Chanyang Shoten, do you really want to become enemies with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? Do you know what will happen to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom?" Prime Minister Che said with a serious expression. Jianchen was much stronger than he had expected. What is the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? 2 special envoys from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom have come. Do you believe that none of you will be able to walk out of the imperial palace of the Kingdom of Jessin today? Chapter 461. The second prince laughed in anger. Good. Looks like the Kingdom of Jessin is determined to become enemies with my Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Brat, no matter who you are, I won't let you leave here alive today. You! The young man's face was full of disdain. His face full of disdain. The second prince flew into a rage when he saw the young man's disdain. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't figure out the young man's strength, he would have personally charged up and cut him to pieces long ago. Sir, who are you? Do you know just how much trouble your words will bring to the Kingdom of Jessin? Minister Che asked with a sunken face. The young man sneered. I am Ming Dong, not a member of the Kingdom of Jessin. Don't drag me into this. Changyang Shoten is my brother. Since you dare to make trouble for my brother, you'll have to get through me first. All right, then let us see just what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant. The second prince glared at Ming Dong. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he yelled, Get some people to capture him. The 3 experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom immediately charged at Ming Dong. Their eyes were cold as they stabbed their saint weapons at Ming Dong's vital points. They didn't hold back at all. Ming Dong snorted coldly as a cold light flashed through his eyes. Surging saint force surged from his right hand, condensing into a faint azure sword in the blink of an eye. He stabbed out 3 times with lightning-like speed, colliding with the saint weapons of the 3 experts. With the sound of metal clashing, the 3 experts' faces changed. Although their opponent was very young, his strength was no weaker than theirs. The azure sword contained surging saint force that was much greater than theirs. It was not something they could withstand. The 3 experts staggered back several steps as they stared at Ming Dong in shock. A 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. You've actually reached the 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. An expert from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom cried out in shock. His face was filled with disbelief. They boasted that their talent was not weak, but they had spent several decades to reach their current level of cultivation after expending a large amount of resources. However, the young man before them did not seem to be older than 30, yet he possessed strength that surpassed them. This greatly shocked them. What? He's a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master? The second prince was surprised as well. He stared at Ming Dong's young face and found it very hard to believe. However, his face soon sank and he said, Isn't he just a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master? Send a few more people and capture him. He can't be forgiven for daring to threaten me, or what will happen to the prestige of my Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? Yes. As soon as the second prince finished speaking, another 6 Earth Saint Masters walked out. They were prepared to deal with Ming Dong together. His Majesty the King has arrived. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out. The king of the Kingdom of Jessin had led a large group of black-armored soldiers and experts from the palace over. The king wore a set of white robes, and his hair was slightly messy. He had clearly rushed over in a hurry. Even Changyang Ba and Bai Yun Tian had come. His Majesty swept his gaze around, clearly seeing the situation in the field. With a gloomy face, he walked in front of the group from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and said in a deep voice, Your Highness, Second Prince, Prime Minister Che, what is the meaning of this? The king's face was filled with anger. His attitude towards the ambassadors of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had become much colder. Your Majesty, Changyang Shoten, and this person called Ming Dong have spoken rudely and offended my Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. I must bring these 2 back for my father's judgment. Anyone who offends my Heavenly Eagle Kingdom cannot be spared. It's best if you don't interfere in this matter, the second prince said coldly. He did not take the king of the Kingdom of Jessin seriously at all. Second prince, you should take your people and leave this place quickly. If this matter gets out of hand, the consequences are not something your Heavenly Eagle Kingdom can bear. the king said in a deep voice. The second prince coldly snorted. Your Majesty, are you trying to stop my heavenly eagle kingdom from doing what I want? Second prince, this is the imperial palace of the kingdom of Jessin, not your heavenly eagle kingdom. The king was truly angry. Now that the kingdom of Jessin had the Qin Empire behind them, he did not fear the heavenly eagle kingdom at all. Moreover, the imperial protector of the Qin Empire was his future son-in-law. This relationship was as strong as iron. What if we insist on doing this? The person who spoke was Minister Che. If you insist on causing trouble in the imperial palace, then don't blame me for not giving you any face. A voice came from the sky. Yi Ming, who was dressed in a long white robe, flew over at a low altitude from far away. Eventually, he landed next to the king. Minister Che coldly snorted. It looks like your kingdom of Jessin is destined to become enemies with my heavenly eagle kingdom. Whatever. Senior George N., I'll have to trouble you to do something. Following Minister Che's words, a middle-aged man in his 50s walked out from the crowd. The middle-aged man's appearance was very ordinary. There was nothing special about him that attracted people's attention. It was very easy for people to overlook his existence. I never thought that your heavenly eagle kingdom would hide a heaven saint master among your ambassadors. I've really misjudged you. A look of surprise flashed through Yi Ming's eyes as he smiled faintly. Minister Che and the second prince became much more confident. Minister Che coldly smiled. The person who came this time is a prince of my heavenly eagle kingdom. It's a long journey. If we don't invite an expert to accompany and protect him, how can the king be at ease? That's true. Yi Ming nodded in agreement. But even if you have a heaven saint master, it won't change anything. George N. took a large step forward as a tremendous presence radiated from his body. He said in a deep voice, It looks like your kingdom of Jessin is determined to become enemies with my heavenly eagle kingdom. We must take away Changyang Shoten and Mingdong. If you want to stop us, then our two kingdoms will have no choice but to fight. At this moment, Jianqin spoke. Senior Yi Ming, since they insist on taking me away, then let them capture me. Leave this matter to me. Don't interfere. Although Jianqin's tone was calm, his gaze towards the people from the heavenly eagle kingdom was filled with disdain. Hearing this, Yi Ming and the king exchanged glances. The king then said, All right then, since it's your request, how can I refuse? Jianqin, these people are far too arrogant. You have to properly teach them a lesson. I'll support you, Mingdong said. He also wanted to personally witness Jianqin's abilities. Jianqin nodded with a smile. He said to the people from the heavenly eagle kingdom, Since you want to take me back, then hurry up and do it. I don't have that much time to waste on you. Brat, you're too arrogant. George N's face sank. He knew that Jianqin was very powerful, so he decided to personally take action. He charged toward Jianqin as a blur as he grabbed at Jianqin's throat with surging saint force in his hand. Jianqin formed a palm with his right hand, and the fire-attributed energy in the surroundings rapidly gathered toward it. He received George N's hand without any fear. When the two collided, a powerful shockwave of energy suddenly erupted and rushed in all directions, destroying the surrounding flowers and plants. The sand and stones on the ground flew up, and the smoke and dust rose up and covered the surrounding space. George N. quickly retreated after the strike. He stared at Jianqin in shock and blankly said, Control the energy of the world. You can actually control the energy of the world. You've already reached the level of Heaven Saint Master. Other than a few people who knew about Jianqin's strength, everyone else was filled with disbelief. Even the cold black armored army stared at Jianqin in shock. What? A Heaven Saint Master? Changyang Shoten is actually a Heaven Saint Master? No, this is impossible. This is definitely impossible. The second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom paled as shock filled his face. Even Prime Minister Che's expression became extremely ugly. "It's a pity that you found out too late," Jianqin coldly said. A dense layer of azure and violet light shone from his right hand as Jianqin charged toward George N with the origin energy of the sword spirits. George N no longer dared to be careless against an opponent of the same level. He immediately drew his saint weapon and used it to receive Jianqin with surging saint force. Ding! George had no idea how powerful the origin energy of the azulite sword spirits was. When his saint weapon collided with the origin energy of the azulite sword spirits, the sound of metal clashing rang out. A two-finger-sized gap immediately appeared in George's saint weapon. Spurt! George N spat out a mouthful of blood as his face instantly paled. When his gaze landed on his damaged saint weapon, his face was immediately filled with shock. How is this possible? You actually destroyed my saint weapon. George N's face was filled with shock. His heart was like a raging sea, unable to remain calm. Jianqin did not give George N any time to catch his breath. The origin energy of the sword spirits left behind a beautiful trail of light in the air as it pierced towards George N with lightning speed. After suffering once, George N became fearful of the sword spirits. He no longer dared to come in contact with them and immediately dodged. However, Jianqin's attacks didn't stop because of this. At this moment, it was as if he was using the origin energy of the sword spirits as the light wind sword. Although he didn't have any Saint Chi to support his attacks and couldn't reach his peak speed, with the help of his powerful body and wind elemental energy, he wasn't much slower than when he was at his peak. Giorgio dodged Jianqin's third attack by a hair's breadth. Before he could even stabilize himself, Jianqin's fourth attack arrived, leaving him nowhere to dodge. He could only brace himself and use his saint weapon to block it. When the two attacks collided, another gap appeared in George N's saint weapon. His saint weapon had been damaged twice in a row, causing his injuries to become even more severe. He spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. Damn it, just what kind of power is this? How can it be so strong? George N was incomparably shocked. His opponent's attack was so powerful that it was impossible for him to move freely. He was completely suppressed, unable to use even 80% of his strength. Chapter 462. George had been defeated by Jianqin in front of everyone. He flew 20 meters before crashing to the ground in a horrible shape. He rolled a few times before coming to a stop. He spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood as his face paled. The people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom paled in fright when they saw this unbelievable scene. The confident second prince and prime minister paled as well. The second prince began to tremble as his eyes filled with fear. The reason why they dared to cause trouble in the Jesson Kingdom's imperial palace was because of George, a Heaven Saint Master. But now, George had been heavily injured after just a few exchanges with his opponent. The difference in strength between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. He could barely even protect himself, so how could he protect them? The people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom all had extremely ugly expressions. They all sternly protected the second prince and prime minister as they stared at the people from the kingdom of Jesson cautiously. Jianqin had defeated a Heaven Saint Master in such a short amount of time, leaving everyone speechless. Possessing the strength of a Heaven Saint Master at such a young age was just too shocking. Moreover, his battle prowess was extraordinarily great. Battles between Heaven Saint Masters were often extremely intense. It was very difficult to determine the victor in a short amount of time, yet Jianqin had managed to heavily injure a Heaven Saint Master in just 2 seconds. His strength was so great that it made everyone tremble. George coughed violently as he slowly stood up from the ground. He stared at Jianqin's young face in shock. He found it very difficult to believe that a young man who seemed to be in his 20s would possess such battle prowess. In particular, The mysterious power that could destroy saint weapons filled George with deep fear. Grasping such a power would give one an absolute advantage in a battle against Heaven Saint Masters. They could even easily kill them. After all, the collision of weapons was unavoidable in a battle. A saint weapon was connected to its master's life force, just like a part of their body. Once a saint weapon was damaged, the master would be heavily injured as well. George used his sword to support himself on the ground. The 2 finger-sized holes in his sword were extremely obvious. What kind of power is that? How can it destroy my saint weapon so easily? George stared at Jianchen sternly, although he forced himself to remain calm. His voice still trembled slightly. The power of that power had already filled him with fear. Jianchen had already withdrawn the origin energy from the sword spirits. He crossed his arms as he coldly stared at George. You don't need to know this. Didn't the people of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom want to capture me? All of you can come at me together. I, Chongyang Shoten, will face you alone. The experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom looked at each other. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now that they knew Jianchen's strength, they had already lost their arrogance from before. Even the second prince and the prime minister fell silent, not daring to make a sound. Even a Heaven Saint Master could be easily defeated. Even if these Earth Saint Masters all charged at him, it would be useless. They would just be sending themselves to their deaths. The difference between a Heaven Saint Master and an Earth Saint Master was just too great. One was in the sky while the other was on the ground. The 2 could not be compared at all. George let out a long sigh as he became rather dispirited. He put away his saint weapon and said to Jianchen, I never thought that such a genius would appear in the kingdom of Jessen. Chongyang Shoten, you are very strong. We are not your opponent. I apologize on behalf of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom for our rudeness from before. With that, George did not wait for Jianchen's reply and left with the people of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Stop right there. Where do you think you're going? Ming Dong's figure flashed as he blocked the path of the people of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. He sneered, People of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, do you really think us brothers are easy to bully? You were just saying that you wanted to capture us and hand us over to your shitty emperor. You were so arrogant that you didn't put anyone in your eyes. Now that you know you're no match for us, you want to slip away. How can it be so easy? George's face sank as unconcealable anger filled his face. He growled, Then what do you want? All of you stay here. Don't even think about taking a single step out of the imperial palace of the kingdom of Jessen, Ming Dong said coldly and seriously. Hearing this, the expressions of the group from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom changed. The Prime Minister opened his mouth and said, Then do you want to imprison all of us here or kill all of us? A tiny kingdom like the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom dares to be so arrogant. Ming Dong snorted coldly. He looked at Jianchen and said, Brother, how do you plan on dealing with them? We can't just let go of what happened last night. Although the assassin's appearance had been disfigured and he had kept his mouth shut, the kingdom of Jessen had not been able to find out his true identity. However, everyone knew what had happened. It was just that they did not say it out loud. Jianchen pondered for a moment before waving his hand. Ming Dong, let them go! Jianchen, are you going to let them go so easily? Ming Dong was unwilling to accept this. Let them go. I have my own plans for this, Jianchen said. Jianchen's attitude was firm. Ming Dong had no other choice. He glared fiercely at the people of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and said, You better not let me run into you in the future. Otherwise, things won't be as easy as today. With that, Ming Dong stepped aside and stood behind Jianchen. The people of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom heaved a sigh of relief. They did not linger and quickly left the place. After what had happened, they no longer had the face to continue staying in the kingdom of Jessen. They directly led the ambassadors out of the imperial palace and out of the kingdom of Jessen. Jianchen, why did you let them go? Ming Dong still felt very unbalanced. The kingdom of Jessen has just gone through a great battle and has suffered greatly. It is not appropriate for us to make an enemy out of the heavenly eagle kingdom, Genshin said. What are you afraid of? Don't forget your current status. Are you afraid of a small kingdom like the heavenly eagle kingdom? Genshin gently shook his head and said, although the Qin Empire is a great deterrent, it is too far away. Sending an army here is simply unrealistic. On the other hand, the heavenly eagle kingdom and the kingdom of Jessen are very close to each other. Moreover, the kingdom of Jessen is very strong. It is best not to make our relationship too tense. Although we are not afraid, the kingdom of Jessen cannot afford to suffer any more. So everything you do is for the sake of the kingdom of Jessen, Mingdong said with relief. He had always been alone. In the past, he had always done things his own way. He rarely considered the consequences of his actions. Therefore, he did not understand Genshin's painstaking efforts. The king came to Genshin's side and said a few words of concern. His attitude was like that of a father caring for his own child. In his heart, he had long since regarded Genshin as his son-in-law. The commotion caused by the heavenly eagle kingdom calmed down very quickly. However, because Genshin's strength had been exposed, his name had already resounded throughout the entire palace. He had become a popular person in the palace. At the same time, news of Genshin and Princess Glan's marriage had also spread throughout the palace, causing everyone to know about it. Although this marriage had been decided a few years ago, the news had not yet been announced. Only the two families involved and the Huayun sect knew about it. It was still a secret in the palace. After the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's special envoy left, the king invited Genshin's family to a private discussion in the Great Assembly Hall. Not long after, an imperial edict was issued from the Great Assembly Hall, shocking everyone in the kingdom of Jessen. The fourth young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten, would henceforth assume the position of imperial protector of the kingdom of Jessen. The authority in his hands was no less than the king's. At the same time, the king also announced the marriage between Changyang Shoten and the Glan princess, allowing everyone in the kingdom of Jessen to know about it. After this incident, the Changyang Prefecture, which had always kept a low profile in Lore City, became one of the most popular families in the kingdom of Jessen. Everyone knew about it, and it was impossible to keep a low profile even if they wanted to. The fourth young master of the Changyang Prefecture also became a topic of discussion among the people of the kingdom of Jessen. His deeds were gradually exposed under the efforts of those who wanted to dig up information about him. The strength that Genshin had revealed in the Great Assembly Hall was not sealed. Instead, under the king's secret instructions, the news quickly spread. Very soon, the name of a 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master resounded throughout the kingdom of Jessen, and it quickly spread to the surrounding kingdoms. However, everyone scoffed at this news. No one really believed it. A 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master was just too much of an exaggeration. In a luxurious inn in Lore City, Dugofeng, dressed in flame-red robes, was drinking alone. Everyone around him was talking about Genshin. Dugofeng also scoffed at this news. He did not believe it at all. Suddenly, a conversation at a table attracted Dugofeng's attention. Isn't the Changyang Prefecture one of the four great families of Lore City? I know a little about the fourth young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. I heard that his talent was outstanding since he was young. In Kargath Academy, he defeated a mid-great saint and a dozen saints as a primary saint. He was very powerful, but he offended the Huayun sect and suddenly disappeared. No one knows where he went. He only returned recently.